afternoon, everyone. This is the 2022 Research Symposium presented to you by the UP Office of the Vice President for Academic Affairs. This 2022 Research Symposium was organized to showcase and feature the latest outputs of research projects under the Emerging Interdisciplinary Program EIDR Cycle 8. We are currently joined by almost 100 participants here in Zoom and on YouTube. It's great to see our participants joining from all over our campuses and even across the Philippines. We are about to start our program in a few, so please text or call your colleagues, your classmates, or your friends to log in now in our Zoom or tune in to our live streaming on YouTube. On your screens, you will see the link to our YouTube channel, which you can share to your colleagues, and we're also posting the links in the chat box. Once again, this is day one of the 2022 Research Symposium, and before anything else, may I invite you to start off our program with the singing of the Philippine National Anthem. We would like to acknowledge the presence of the UP officials and distinguished guests present today. We have Vice President for Development, Dr. Elvira Zamora, Vice President for Public Affairs, Dr. Elena Prenia. Magandang hapon po. To formally open and welcome everyone to this year's Research Symposium, may I introduce the person who spearheads UP System's academic and research initiatives. Please let us all welcome the Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Maria Cynthia Rose Banzon Bautista.
Thank you, Isaiah. So the distinguished members of the EIDR Evaluation and Monitoring Committee, fellow officials of the UP system and of constituent universities, symposium participants, colleagues and friends in and out of UP, and the researchers who will be sharing the findings of their research today and tomorrow. A pleasant afternoon to you all and welcome to the symposium. Our last research symposium was held before the pandemic disrupted the rhythm of our academic life. Like our counterparts in the Asia-Pacific region and maybe other parts of the world, the attention of our office was inordinately focused on helping the university navigate an uncharted territory while sticking to the principles that guided us, keeping the UP communities throughout the UP system safe from COVID, ensuring learning continuity, and being mindful of equity concerns. As the implementing arm of research projects funded by the university and the Oversight Office for projects under the Philippine California Advanced Research Institutes, the last 2 years also saw us helping researchers troubleshoot the myriad and unprecedented challenges they confronted beyond the usual research concerns, all because of the pandemic. Against this backdrop, it is auspicious that we are now holding the 2022 Research Symposium at this time, as we move with more confidence than 2 years ago towards the future of teaching and learning in UP and the scaled up research and innovations of the next normal, the strategic directions for which are now within sight. The Emerging Interdisciplinary Research Program of the university, which the UP Board of Regents approved in August 2011, is a part of the Reinventing Research in UP initiative launched by then UP President Alfredo Pascual and my predecessor, Giselle Concepcion. As the flagship research program of the UP system, EIDR aims to enable UP researchers to produce high-quality publications and other academic output quickly and regularly, lay the groundwork for building a strong research culture in UP with our research experts mentoring the present and future generations of UP researchers in the best practices of research, promote interdisciplinary and intercampus research interactions and activities to make us really one UP, or to substantiate and completely breathe life into one UP, support the creation of value networks from basic to applied research to produce discoveries and innovations that can be developed and packaged into useful and marketable products and services involving integrated teams of researchers in the natural, engineering, and computational sciences, as well as in business economics, management and development, and the arts, culture, and lifestyle creators that contribute to our growth and development as a UP community and as a nation. Since 2012, the EIDR has supported 96 programs in the basic sciences, mathematics, engineering, food, health, environment, energy, governance, education, arts, humanities, and communications. To date, the program has produced over 200 Web of Science and Scopus Index publications and mentored and graduated more than 100 or almost 100 BS and BA students, 112 Masterals, MS and MA students, and 23 PhD students. Outputs produced by the program include the production of multimedia materials for GE courses. Some of the videos are already available in at TVUP, audio files on Mandaya oral traditions, an archive and digital internet database of Philippine performance, rituals, cultural spectacles, festivals, dance, theater, criticism, and scholarship, opera and comedia productions with CD recordings, and academic and coffee table books, a comprehensive and critical survey of mass transit plans for Metro Manila and its relatively tightly knit series of academic critiques, and a syllabi for undergraduate and graduate level bioinformatics, among many others. EIDR was designed to call for research projects that address the very needs of the university and the nation, as reflected in what our researchers will be sharing today and tomorrow. What they will be sharing covers collaboration within and across different branches of knowledge and within and across our campus, our constituent universities. Aligning more mindfully with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the EIDR Cycle 9, we are now going to present Cycle 8, but the EIDR Cycle 9 projects funded this year address the following. SDG 3, good health and well-being, triggered by the COVID-19 to prepare for the battle and prepare us battle against future pandemics and to reduce mortalities from diseases. SDG 4, quality education, recognizes the opportunities to explore technological solutions for remote learning. SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, solutions to ensure access to reliable and sustainable energy, especially for vulnerable communities. And SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, reducing food waste and on food losses along production and supply chains. We are now classifying all our past projects because we are more mindful of SDGs to actually explicitly state what SDGs they are addressing. Unfortunately, many of the current research projects are still catching up to address the adverse impact of the pandemic. For instance, scientific research disruptions were experienced because of laboratory activities which were suspended or field works which were suspended by lockdowns, creative works halting production of performances and their research outputs, and so on. However, and I can say this with greater confidence now, we are beginning to rise with more certainty about these challenges while also preparing or keeping ourselves prepared for unexpected turns in our COVID situation. In other words, preparing ourselves for a disruptive world. We applaud and are very proud of the accomplishments of the EIDR Cycle 8 projects, which will be presented shortly. Despite the difficulties of the pandemics, these projects and the project leaders and the project teams possess the grit to produce knowledge amidst adversity. We commend the work of the EIDR Evaluation and Monitoring Committee, that shared specifically their work for their work for the Cycle 8, shared by Professor Emeritus Evelyn May Texon Mendoza, co-chaired by Professor Emeritus Elsie Jimenez, with Professor Emeritus Rod Azanza, Professor Emeritus Cleo Cervancia, Professor Emeritus Seferino Maala, Professor Emeritus Henry Ramos, Professor Lily Tope, Professor Gloria Nelson, Professor Joy Abrenica, Dr. Nina Gloriani, Dr. Eva Cuchonco de la Paz, of course, AVP Carla Di Malanta, and for Cycle 8, Professor Emeritus Emmanuel de Jos. So thank you very much. We hope you will have a stimulating and productive discussion and listening and the sharing of our researchers from EIDR Cycle 8. Thank you very much and welcome again.
Thank you very much, Paul, VP Bautista, for the warm welcome to everyone in this series symposium. Our next speaker shall give us an overview of the research symposium and today's lineup of presentations and flow. She is currently a Professor Emeritus of the University of the Philippines and Chair of the EIDR Evaluation and Monitoring Committee. To also chair the first session for today's symposium, let us all give a virtual round of applause for Professor Emeritus Evelyn May Texon Mendoza.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Magandang hapon. At welcome ulit sa ating 2022 Research Symposium of the OVPAA for the EIDR projects. Thank you, VP Sinch, for giving a very comprehensive background of the EIDR program. And as she said, we are now on Cycle 8, which means there have been 7 other cycles before Cycle 8. No? So I think she mentioned that this was started in 2012, so 2013. So Cycle 1 was, we only had 5 programs and projects. Cycle 2 had 7. Cycle 3 had 5. Cycle 4 had 4. Cycle 5, 5. Cycle 6, 24. Cycle 7, 9. And Cycle 8. For this symposium, we have 13 papers that will be presented. And there are 2 batches for Cycle 8. For Cycle 8, the call was done on June 1, 2016 by then VP Gisela Concepcion. And all constituent units were invited to submit full proposals. And at least 1 proposal with lead proponents from UP Baguio, UP Cebu, UP Mindoro, and UP Visayas would be considered for funding. No? And as in previous EIDR calls, collaboration with international scientists, leading SUCs and HEIs, government agencies, and private sector was strongly encouraged. And we are very pleased that we can hold this EIDR symposium at this time. It's a 2022 research symposium of the EIDR. And it is not the first one. Also, we had our first EIDR symposium on November 26, 2013 at UPLB. It was a small group because there were only few projects at the time. And it became bigger and bigger. So 2015, and then 2016, this time at the National Institute of Physics at UP Diliman, 2017 also. And that already included the other research programs of OVPAA. And then a very big one, Knowledge Festival in Tagaytay in 2019. And now we are on our research symposium for the cycle 8 this year. So first, I'd like to inform you that the research projects that we have that we are going to discuss this today and tomorrow have research posters, and they are now available on the OVPA website. You can view them. It's a virtual poster exhibit. So why the symposium? It's really to provide a platform for our researchers, for our grantees, to share the research results with fellow grantees and young researchers and mentees. No, we have always been emphasizing on the mentoring part of objective of this research program, and so that we can have interaction among them, and perhaps our researchers can meet future collaborators. Remember that great discoveries and inventions have been made through collaborations between researchers from different institutions. No? So for the symposium, we have 4 sessions, 2 this afternoon, to present 7 papers today and 6 papers tomorrow. So you can see the breadth of the topics that will be tackled in these 2 sessions this afternoon. The first session will be on material science, chemistry, chemical engineering, material science. Then we go into humanities and arts, tourism. Tomorrow we'll be tackling other topics on health and nutrition, and so we are really looking forward to hearing our speakers share, our researchers share the results, perhaps also the challenges that they have met this afternoon. So I think we should be ready with the first paper post. Okay, so the first paper is on zinc air battery, oxygen electrocatalyst research and prototype design and development, to be presented by our young Professor Dr. Joey Ocon of the Department of Chemical Engineering, UP Diliman. Let us all listen to Dr. Ocon, Professor Ocon, talk about his research on zinc air batteries.
Thank you, Professor Emeritus Evelyn. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Once again, I'm Joey from the Department of Chemical Engineering at UP Diliman, and I'm going to discuss this afternoon our project Zinc Air Battery, Oxygen Electrocatalyst Research Prototype Design and Development. So this is a startup research grant, and the purpose is to enable our very young lab at that time to recruit graduate students, equip our lab with necessary laboratory equipment, and jumpstart our research in the group. The members of the project team, and of course the project leader, part of the team is Professor Alan Padama of UP Los Baños, the Institute of Mathematical Sciences and Physics. Another faculty from the department, Assistant Professor Marlon Mopon, who is currently pursuing his PhD at TU Delft after completing his MS under my supervision, and 2 young graduate students, Mr. Eugene Esparcia, who is now pursuing his PhD at KAIST in South Korea, and Mr. Jethro Pascasio, currently pursuing his PhD also at GIST in South Korea. So the project was implemented by the Laboratory of Electrochemical Engineering, which was started in 2014, I finished my PhD in 2015, hence the application for a startup grant at OVPAA, and we are very fortunate that this was funded under the EIDR program. So the interests of our group, we are very much focused on energy storage technologies, utilizing different fields of science such as electrochemistry, material science, spectroscopy, catalysis, and engineering fields like chemical engineering and material science, understanding how reactions can be facilitated in batteries, in fuel cells, in hydrogen generation systems. Since then, we've been able to expand our research agenda, and that's one of the output from this project because of the resources given to us. In terms of student mentoring, for the past 5 years since the lab was started, we've been able to mentor 2 successful PhD graduates. One is currently the chair of the department, Dr. Julie De Rosario, and another is a faculty member of De La Salle in Manila. We're able to mentor also in the project successful MS graduates, most of whom have already completed their degrees and are currently taking their PhD in Europe, in US, in Japan, in South Korea, and in the Netherlands. All right, so let me talk about minor details of the projects. The project is about zinc air fuel cells, zinc air batteries, or sometimes we call them zinc air fuel cells. The zinc air fuel cells or zinc air batteries, they use metal anodes, okay, as your source of electron, and these electrons are liberated during the oxidation process. Meanwhile, in the other side of your battery, you have an air-breathing cathode, which take in oxygen. Oxygen is reduced in the cathode, and these redox reactions will be able to generate energy. Okay? And the advantage of zinc air batteries or metal air batteries in general is that they have a really high energy density. So they have the potential to solve issues related to performance, resource availability, safety, cost effectiveness, and environmental impact of most commonly used batteries like lithium-ion batteries. However, the oxygen reduction reaction is kinetically sluggish. So you have to facilitate this reaction through the use of an electrocatalyst. Okay. So on top of those advantages of zinc air batteries, they also offer a flat discharge profile, which is helpful in selecting applications of this battery, a long shelf life without significant self discharge or parasitic currents, and the products can be disposed without significant ecological problems. Now, there are already commercially available metal air battery systems. For instance, these are the markets that are being catered now by a company in Spain, Sigasa, and they market zinc air alkaline batteries for railway signaling, for road navigation systems, electric fencing, portable LED lamps, and other applications. Now, the focus of our project is to find alternative catalysts for the ORR reaction in zinc air batteries. And currently, if you want to facilitate ORR, in the case of fuel cells that are found in Toyota's Mirai, the fuel cell electric vehicle, they're using platinum-based catalysts. So either they are pure platinum in carbon or platinum cobalt alloys. And we all know that noble metal group or platinum group metals are quite expensive. So in order to facilitate this reaction, you can look for alternative catalysts based on more abundant elements like manganese, cobalt, iron, nickel. And you can combine that with a highly conductive carbon substrate together with doping of heteroatoms to increase the electrocatalytic activity. So the objective of this project is to investigate the viability of using waste biomass as a support for a manganese oxide carbon-based electrocatalyst via hydrothermal carbonization. We've been able to perform also the required physicochemical characterization of the catalyst via your standard SEM, XRD, FTIR, and other characterization methods. We want to investigate also the viability of different types of metals as anodes for a portable battery, and to look at the use of computational techniques like density functional theory to elucidate mechanisms in the ORR reactions. And lastly, to design and build an emergency device prototype using the metal air battery as an energy source. So for these objectives, we've been able to accomplish all of the objectives identified in our project. And as you can see on the left side, you have different types of biomass, which we process to create highly conductive carbon frameworks. And carbon frameworks were used to support for the manganese oxide catalyst, which was synthesized also by the group. In terms of performance, it's not as high performing as platinum, but given the low cost nature of its application, in the case of emergency devices, we believe that it's capable of performing as a good catalyst for metal air batteries. So on top of this main publication of the paper, the project was able to contribute towards several thesis papers and dissertation papers of our laboratory. For instance, in this paper at the ACS Journal Chemistry of Materials, our project staff, Mr. Eugene Esparcia, looked at a new type of anode, a new type of cathode for next generation magnesium ion batteries. And these ammonium vanadate bronze cathodes have the potential to be high capacity cathode. So I think this was the highest impact factor for a master's thesis in the college. I've been able to successfully publish it at Chemistry of Materials. Another paper, this one in RAC Advances, in collaboration with Professor Alan Padama, we looked at the incorporation of heteroatom dopants on the pristine graphene structure and graphene with defects. We used DFT calculations to show that the introduction of certain dopants on graphene structure enable the dope graphene to have a higher electrocatalytic activity. So this was authored, the lead author is Mr. Ace Siraon. So he's currently pursuing his PhD at Osaka University in Japan after completing this paper and completing his master's under my supervision. And another paper, you have a paper at Catalyst. We looked at the other side of the cell, the anode side. We investigated nickel-based catalyst for ethanol electro-oxidation. So this paper was authored by my master's student, Mr. Junji Lidasan, who is currently pursuing his PhD at Tokyo Institute of Technology, close to finishing now. This paper in ACS Applied Materials and Interfaces was authored by, co-first authored by my student, Ms. Maricor de Vinigracia. We looked at the effect of different ions in the electrical double layer of electrochemical cells. So we're proud to say that all of these papers have been lead authored by our graduate students. On top of these publications, using the resources of the project, we've been able to present in several local and international conferences in Asia and in Europe. And also several student groups in the department under my supervision were able to come up with their own emergency metal air battery prototypes. This was for 2 years when the project ran, and these were field tested, and these prototypes were already using the catalyst that we fabricated during the project. As for the significant outputs and impacts of the project, I guess the main purpose of the startup grant really is to jumpstart our research. And from the original research agenda of doing electrochemistry and catalysis, we've been able to expand the scope of the research that we are doing at the Laboratory of Electrochemical Engineering to cover not just material science level, but also DFT and multiphysics modeling and up to energy systems modeling. We've been able to equip the lab with a rotating ring disc electrode assembly, which we are currently using to evaluate catalysts for fuel cell and battery applications. And we're happy to report that the lab has grown on top of the 2 PhD and 22 MS graduates that we have for the past 6 to 7 years and 80 publications. We now have 3 postdocs in our group, 30 masters and PhD students, and majority of these personnel are funded by new projects that we got. For instance, this new DOST R&D Center for Advanced Batteries will run for 3 years from January this year to December 2024, funded through the NICER program of DOST. And another Ched Picari project will start April 18 this year for the next 2 years. So with the acquisition of new projects and resources, we've been able to host Balik scientists, postdoctoral fellows in our group. We have 2 of them now, and another one is returning in summer this year after completing his PhD at University of California, Merced. So in terms of the SDGs that we've been able to address, SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, industry, innovation, infrastructure, and lastly, having the network to pursue all of these R&D activities. So maraming salamat po sa OVPA, kay VP Sinch and AVP Carla, and to the EMC mga hardworking faculty members from the department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Joey Ocon. Ang galing, no? I think we visited your laboratory probably twice during the time that you started and were doing the experiments. And it's really very heartwarming to see all the achievements that you have made in the past 5 years or so. Congratulations. No? And okay, so we have 5 minutes for a Q&A. And I'll just ask, no? Kasi actually, ang daming parang ito na yung technology that will be helping us for our energy needs, no? Meron ba dito, I'm sure na meron kang nasa TTBDO na for patenting or intellectual property protection. Of course, you cannot discuss the details, but you can tell us so that our audience will be further incentivized.
Yeah, thank you po, ma'am. So in terms of disclosures po, we have 1 successful software disclosure. Meron na pong copyright. And then we are filing also another set of disclosures. In terms of technology transfer, some faculty members in my group and yung mga researchers ko, we're planning to have our own technology startup this year. It may be able to license technologies from our laboratory, especially if it's already protected by through IP or through patent to software disclosures. So yung plan po namin is to have a separate technology startup that can work on technology development in parallel with the university-based group, and then that group can license the technology that will be generated through the various grants that we receive from UP, from Ched, and from DOST.
Thank you very much. We have a related question from Dr. Al Sarafika. Dr. Al, good afternoon. It's any IP and plant commercialization, good plan to have spin-off. Probably you can add to your comments to that.
Yeah, thank you, Sir Al. Yeah, for this particular project po, it's a relatively small project. So we don't think na merong IP that can come out of it directly. But there are other projects sa lab na naging anak na po nung project na to. And we think that we can file IP and then license it to the spin-off company.
Marami talagang pinanganak tong project na ito. Imagine 2 PhD graduates and 26 MS. Grabe. And published in high impact factor journals. And I can see AVP Carla, you know, sabi niya, ang galing-galing talaga. Any other questions from our audience here? We have 148 participants. Thank you very much for attending our research symposium. This should serve as an inspiration, no, to our young researchers. You know, this is a small grant of less than 3 million pesos. Pero kita nyo yung pagkagamit niya. No, so we have two different kinds of tawag dito, grants for this, the small grants like this, startup grants as he said, and the big grants for the programs. And Prof. Joey, you use it very, very well, no? So,
Ma'am, I think Prof. Al Serafika has a question. Another
yes,
question.
Dr. Al, please come in.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to see Joey. Actually, may mga apo na yata pagdating sa mga grad students. But this is a unique opportunity for you, Joey, with the 2 new grants for NICER and PICARI. I think to do an advanced planning of your research for both not only publication but IP. Because you already have a base part. It's very unique in the Philippines that you can have an IP planning capability. Normally what happens is you do your research, then if something happens that's unique or unplanned, that you think there's IP, you file. But in your case, you have a good group, you're bringing in new blood and definitely have funding. You have all the ingredients to indeed to create a spin-off, but at the same time, be able to plan your research to actually project an IP track in that regard. So it's very seldom that happens. I used to do that for my startup company because I have a 15-year time frame and also had funding that unencumbered for the next 5 years when we plan things. So I think with this new funding, you can probably initiate that. And definitely, we're more than happy to help you in this planning at TTBDO and also plan out a commercialization plan for your spin-off. But very good work and excited to see your future products as well as and patents as well. Yun na lang kulang dun sa listahan mo. But congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you very much, Dr. Al. Tama yung kailangan ni Joey ng backup, tawag dito yung aalagaan talaga na hindi malalabas yung kanilang mga IPs, no? Kailangan ma-protect eh. So we just don't publish at once, no? So we will need your advice on this. So you'll be official advisor to our Prof. Joey. So I think
we'll be in touch, Al.
Yes, please do that. Please do that. AVP Carla, any questions, comments for Prof. Joey? Wala daw, but she has been nodding her head. So I think we have to say thank you very much to Joey. Congratulations. And also to your teammates, the young researchers, the whom you have mentored, your collaborators, all of them have contributed to your project. Pero ikaw ang leader eh, no? So kung wala yung leadership na yon, mahihirapan tayo. So again, congratulations, Prof. Joey.
Thank you, thank you, Alexa.
Thank you very much. Talaga pong siya ay achiever and he has also an achiever team. So congratulations, Prof. Joey Ocon. We proceed to our second research to be presented. polydopamine nanocoatings and nanoparticles research for target beneficial applications. And this time we have Dr. Guillermo Nuesca, professor from the Institute of Chemistry or UP Diliman. So let us all listen to Dr. Nuesca's talk on polydopamine, nanocoatings, and nanoparticles. Take it away, Dr. Nuesca.
Magandang araw po. Ako po si Guillermo M. Nasca, Program Leader ng EIDR project na ito, titled Polydopamine Nanocoatings and Nanoparticle Research for Target Beneficial Application. This program is divided into two parts, two projects. The polydopamine nanocoatings is modifier for biomedical bandages and similar substrates. And the second project is entitled polydopamine-based nanomicroencapsulants and particles for molecular loading and controlled release applications. So as I was saying, these are two projects. I'm the project leader for Project 1, and Project 2 project leader is Dr. Alan Christopher Yago. And we have a collaborator, Dr. Jose Lito Rosal, and he is based on the Institute of Frontier Materials at Deakin University in Australia. Our project staff, Ms. Patricia Herrera, Ms. Roma Lopez, and Ms. Regina Ocampo. And we have students who are working and expected to graduate with an MS degree, Ms. Lisette Nella, Ms. Patricia Herrera, and Ms. Roma Lopez. And BS students, Audrey Garcia and Steffi Tan. So our program is sort of a nature-inspired materials chemistry research, and we're trying to explore the beneficial properties of using polydopamine films, or PDA, and other biocompatible related materials. So we're targeting them because they offer, PDA films offer the flexibility for various chemical functionalization and material modifications so that they can be used for many industrial health or biomedical applications. So the overall objective of our program, of the two projects, is first to develop protocols and techniques to polymerize the dopamine and to prepare these polydopamine films or PDA-based composites. Second is to prepare nanofilms of this PDA and as modifiers of various substrates, particularly bandage or wound dressing materials, again for enhanced biomedical applications, for example, incorporating already the antimicrobial or drug into the pads. And lastly, for the project 2, we want to understand the preparation of PDA-based nano or microencapsulants. So these are nanoemulsions, and to utilize them for possible encapsulation or absorption of different compounds, especially medical drugs, and molecular markers. So you might ask, why polydopamine of all the naturally occurring polymers? So polydopamine offers a very simple synthetic polymerization procedure. So dopamine in aqueous solution, for example, can easily be modified and polymerized, and by employing various oxidizing agents or even simply changing the pH. So the requirements for solvent condition are also quite simple, and there are various methods aside from just pH change, like electropolymerization and electrospinning, that can be used to polymerize the dopamine so that different types of polymeric materials such as nanofilms, nanospheres, nanocapsules, and nanofibers can be formed. The picture here shows you how the polydopamine on different substrates can still be further chemically functionalized. For example, this cherry tomato can be made to be hydrophobic, while in the other photo, you can see that the polydopamine, which is coating the Teflon, which is originally hydrophobic, by modifying the polydopamine, the substrate can now then be made to be hydrophilic. So what are the different highlights that we have accomplished for this project? So as we have said, that we are targeting the polydopa deposition on different types of substrates. So we have optimized first the polymerization condition of PDA deposition, and then we have used these processes to prepare the PDA on medical bandages or available medical bandages, and also use this process for our own electrospun polymers. So after these substrates are polymerized with dopamine, then we were able to modify them either with addition of metal ions or metal nanoparticles or antibiotic compounds. No? So in terms of the materials that we ourselves prepare as potential materials for wound dressing and bandages, so we have prepared and characterized PDA modified electroson polymers such as polylactic acid, polyvinyl alcohol, and polycaprolactone polymers. And we have performed antimicrobial studies and materials chemical characterization using these prepared substrates. This slide just summarizes the methodology that we did for the optimization of the PDA film growth. So either the deposition of the PDA on commercial bandages and electrospun fibers, we first studied the solution chemistry of the PDA. So we studied different pH conditions for polymerization and two types of buffers. Of course, we also did concentration ratios of the starting materials and the addition of catalyst to maximize the film growth and at the minimum time. And again, as I was saying, the modification of the films were also done. In terms of the electrospinning optimization studies, we studied solution composition, the voltage applied, and the other various deposition parameters. In terms of chemical and physical characterization of the solution and films, we use UV visible spectroscopy, and for morphology and texture, we use just optical imaging and secondary electron microscopy, or SEM. For the chemistry, we use FTIR, and we also did some contact angle measurements to measure adhesion, and did a little bit of mechanical strength test for the films. In terms of antimicrobial assay, we outsource this activities to the UP NSRI Microbiology Research Laboratory. And they perform for us two types of bioassays. So this slide just summarizes how we monitor the polymerization, starting from a dopamine, which is a clear solution. And then, for example, if you add or change the pH by adding the buffer, then the solution color will change, and we can monitor it visually or using UVVs. So the parameters for optimization of the polymerization can be monitored using UVVs or visually, as you can see from these pictures. So even for the polymerization of the medical bandages can also be seen visually. So what are the highlights of our results based on this polymerization studies? So the concentration of the starting dopamine, of course, affects the rate of polymerization. We have found that there is an optimum pH for polymerization. And the buffer type, and we were surprised that the buffer type can also affect the kinetics. So a faster polymerization in the phosphate buffer saline solution, or PBS, is of a much better rate versus the Britton-Robinson buffer. And we have found out that acidic solutions, so pH less than 5, would hardly give you any polymerization at all. In terms of oxidizing agent, so the addition of ammonium persulfate as an oxidizing agent compared to just plain air-based oxidation can again facilitate the fast oxidation. In terms of catalyst, we explored the use of copper ion in solution, and of course, it did its job in making the polymerization much faster. However, we observed precipitation of copper hydroxide, and this could have an effect on the growing film. With regard to the PDA deposition or polymerization on modified bandages, we of course observed that a higher or faster degree of polymerization will be observed if the APS oxidizing agent is added, PBS buffer is considered, and a pH of 8 is used. And we have found out that the removal of the solution or the bandages in the solution would still further continue the polymerization. In terms of our bioactivity assay results, we have found, so we use two methods, right? So the phosphate buffer itself shows antibacterial activity, but the addition of dopamine and the solution increases further the bioactivity. And using the other assay, which is the fluorescence-based transformation of blue resasudine to pink resosylrufine, the bioassay results indicate that the PDA-treated films show lesser discoloration from blue to pink, indicative of higher bioactivity again of the PDA-treated films. Therefore, these bioactivity results indeed indicate that the PDA film depositions of polymers on substrates have a great potential for biomedical application. So in terms of our electrospinning results, so there is indeed a lot of potential in the use of electrospinning and the formation of polymer nanofibers for various medical purposes because it is a very versatile process and can be considered more economical, producing films with desirable properties such as high porosity, high volume ratio, and and normally we found that the films can be easily more functionalized after the polymerization. We have developed methods of electrospinning of PLA, PVA, and PCL. And these are all biodegradable and biocompatible polymers. And of course, we were able to characterize this electrospun polymers. So this slide just shows us that continuous thick interwoven fibers have been grown in a reasonable time of deposition. So PLA and PVA were successfully electrospun on the aluminum substrates. And we have found the appropriate solvents to dissolve the starting monomers for these polymers, no? As indicated here. And we also did some film modification studies. That is the addition of silver to the solution prior to the electrospinning. So the silver is incorporated during the electrospinning. And a second type is the already electrospun film is soaked into a solution of silver ions. And in both cases, we have found out that the modified films offer a higher or a better antibacterial property. So both showed bioactivity. So we have demonstrated that electrospinning could be a simple and a cost-effective process for the fabrication of nanofibrous materials with high surface area and porosity. So the resulting structure and morphology of these nanofibers are heavily influenced by the solution properties and operational parameters during electrospinning, but scalability of the process is quite promising. So the initial results showed that the PVA nanofibers and dopamine-modified PVA films themselves do not exhibit inherent significant antibacterial property, but the addition of antibacterial agents such as silver ions or silver nanoparticles could enhance the bioactivity of these films. We can also say that the electrospun polymers can be loaded with other compounds such as antibiotics. No? So they can be fabricated for potential controlled drug release. For example, again, for wound dressing application. Much work has to be done on this related electrospinning of biocompatible polymers, and we are doing this work in our labs. The second project involves the preparation of nanoemulsion dispersions. These are sort of a mixture of water, oil, and surfactants, and they are mixed together using mechanical shear or bisurfactant stabilization. As you can see on the right side, different types of nanoemulsions can be made, and they are of great interest recently due to their possible application in food, cosmetic, in drug encapsulation, and as delivery systems, for example, in intravenous biomedical systems. And much has to be learned in their synthesis, especially on how surfactants play an important role in maintaining the stability of the system. And in line with this, we have developed a technique for nanoemulsion synthesis using surfactant stabilization of biologically compatible natural oils. For example, olive oil and virgin coconut oil in water. with the use also of course, surfactants. In this case, we used different types of tooling. Uh, we have found out the parameters for micelle formation, and the coating of the nanoemulsion with PDA was created. No? So the stability of these nanoemulsions against flocculations and coalescence uh, were initially studied and are continued to be the work are continued to be done on the uptake and the release of targeted materials. But we started with dyes on PDA coated nanoemulsion. So the result of this research, contribute to the understanding of the synthesis of PDA modified micellar structures or nanoemulsions. And again, PDA offers a lot of flexibility for chemical functionalization. So our results are quite promising. Further stability and long-term storage studies of the PDA modified encapsulants and further incorporation of relevant targets are, of course, necessary. And controlled release studies of these materials are necessary depending on the target application. But as you can see from the right side, the use of nanoemulsions, especially PDA modified nanoemulsions, have indeed promising applications in the future. This just shows you the SDGs affected by our program or project. So before I end, I want to acknowledge the UP-OBPA EIDR, of course, and the DOST for the support, the UP Diliman Institute of Chemistry and College of Science, the UPNSR MRSL, and the UPNSR for the continued funding for related work on electrospinning, the Institute of Frontier Materials at Deakin University, and Dr. Rasal for the training that they provided for our visiting scientists and student, Dr. Yago and Miss Mela to Australia, and the students who are graduate students and the research staff, and the BS chemistry students that have worked for this project. Our results have already been previously shown in or shared in the 2019 Philippine Chemistry Congress, and manuscripts regarding these studies are underway. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Nuesca. Congratulations. Um, ano naman itong ating polydopamine nanocoatings and nanoparticles research. Okay, while waiting for the other questions to come, I just would like to know, how do the nanoparticles like the silver, copper, and zinc, I think, affect the chemical and physical characteristics of the film itself?
So far, ma'am, but that's a good question. So what we did was just to study first the bioactivity, but so far we didn't see any direct changes in the properties of the film themselves when we added these modifiers. So I didn't put a lot of details on our experiments, so because we haven't published our results yet. But two of our research assistants who work with this project are doing their masters and hopefully will defend soon, so that the data will be available.
That's
But
great.
as a quick answer, they do not affect that much because we are only using a very minimal amount of the added materials.
But certainly they would affect the biological activity, because the silver itself and the, I think, copper
Yes,
and
ma'am.
zinc would have antibacterial activity.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So
And they might also have an effect on the mechanical and the physical aspects of the film.
yeah. Okay, so first I'd like to read the big congratulations and thank you, Guillermo and team, coming from VP Sinch, no? Kanina nakataas pa yung kamay niya at saka nakapalakpak na gano'n eh. So thank you again, Dr. Noel. May I ask Dr. Serafica to give his question now? Dr. Al is raising his hand. Please.
Thank you, Chair May. Yeah, very interesting work, Dr. Nuesca. I was in wound dressing development for about 15 years on my product in the US. So clearly that's one of the areas that a lot of people tend to like to get into very early because it's easy. Actually, I did propose when I was visiting professor in UP in 2014 with Leslie and I of Triple M. We proposed for a not a decoco because my product is a bacterial cellulose-based material, but together with monolaurin, which is the VCO derivative that has antimicrobial capability, being both native materials. But the problem that we encountered very early is the ability to sterilize the wound dressings because we didn't have any facility. So I ended up helping PNRI to put up a project to put up extra capacity for gamma sterilization, which was non-existent in the Philippines at that point. So that might be a problem moving forward for your materials. If you wanted to start using it for clinical trials, you will have a difficult time sterilizing it with gamma, and doing steam sterilization is not going to be worth your while unless it's stable under steam, high pressure. So that's one aspect. But I like your ability to electrospun. I've been advising another electrospinning group out of San Carlos, but the need for us to actually create membranes, filters that are electrospun films. I was working with Millipore in 1993, almost 30 years ago, making dialysis membranes. And clearly, this is a capability that I wish the Philippines had. For the last 8 years I've been back here, and I did ask the UST to fund the membrane research sana to the nanotechnology of Leslie in the UST, but unfortunately the capability of the group is not there. And I'm hoping that you would actually entertain that, hopefully another branch of your research, a little bit not towards the drug development, nothing against it. I have been in both areas of drug research as well as wound dressing, topical applications, and a very difficult market and a difficult regulatory pathway, a lot of clinical trials involved in there. But I think what the country needs, at least for me, is for water resources, is being able to create our own filters and membranes, both for water desalination or water purification, as well as air purification. Now that COVID is here, we can't even make our own air filters, HEPA filters here. Of course, electrospun membranes are very good HEPA filters, if you can qualify them and characterize them. So just 2 areas of research for you to consider, but good job in getting your group built up. And this is exactly what the IDR was planned to be, to have a community of researchers focusing on 1 or 2 or 3 problems very intently. The same way Joey did for batteries. I think you can do it for PDA and expand your polymer. You're already in PVL and polyacrylonitrile as well. There are a lot of good biocompatible, but again, I'd rather that we focus on locally available material like nanocellulosics. I know clearly COVID at Vincula also has been advocating the use of nano whiskers, cellulose whiskers. So clearly being able to combine the technique of making films as well as locally indigenous materials that we can source here that are not polymeric based would be worth the research as well, since the technique is very similar. And so good luck. I mean, I'll be watching you. Watching your development as well. But
Thank you Thank you very much, Dr. Serafica. And then we will take your, those are very valuable insights. And we're very thankful for the EIDR, for UP, and for the initial for the DOST, for providing us we have the capacity now. No? So we have the electrospinner and many of the tools for characterization. So we really appreciate the help of UP.
Good to hear Al, ito yung kanyang 40 years ba Al na experience na sinishare sa atin, sa ating young researchers. So Prof. Nuesca, please, mo yan, take the opportunity. And congratulations, no? Ang galing na nung ginagawa nyo. And take heed of what he said, mahirap talaga yung pagka napunta ka ng sa health, no, because of the clinical trial. So, but we can see na you have already done the footwork, the background for you to further your work. Congratulations.
So, medyo nahirapan lang po kami because of the COVID. So our bioactivity assays were really affected. So
Hopefully, makakabalik na kayo sa laboratory.
Opo, sige.
So,
Thank
and
you
we
po.
will visit you again. Okay.
Okay, salamat
So
po.
thank you very much, Dr. Nuesca. Thank you, Dr. Al, for all your insights and comments and suggestions. And we proceed to our third paper for the session. And we will be now focusing on, it's still, on chemistry, highly luminescent and doped carbon quantum dots from fishery waste materials for potential applications in photocatalytic degradation of selected dyes. And we have as our presenter, the project leader, Dr. Concepcion Ponce, Associate Professor from the Department of Chemistry, UP Visayas. And so, welcome, Dr. Ponce. Let us listen to your research on carbon quantum dots.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Our project is entitled Highly Luminescent and Doped Carbon Quantum Dots from Fishery Waste Materials for Potential Applications in Photocatalytic Degradation of Selected Dyes. So our project started in February 1, 2020. By March 15, we already had the lockdown. So you can imagine the challenges that we had to face in order to get our results for this project. So I am joined by Maria Cristina A. Dancel, a PhD, focused on the chromatography and design of experiments. And then Arnold Gahe on the photonic side, so optical properties of the quantum dots that we prepared. And Hannah Valencia, our research assistant, doing the experimental experiments for us. And then we have mentored 2 Master of Chemistry students and 3 BS Chemistry students. We are joined by 1 young faculty, so we are pulling him into doing research while still young. And then we also have shared researchers. So Glenn Rose Whelan is a researcher on the innovation side of my patent mining project. So she's also doing some of the modifications of our quantum dots. So the rationale for doing our research is that there is a continuing demand for developing environment-friendly and sustainable technologies. So these are basically to minimize the detrimental effects of food processing waste thrown into marine ecosystem, and also to address the concerns in aquaculture industries, such as on the detection and monitoring of contaminants, as well as on bioremediation. So looking at these 3 areas, we actually did interviews in the region, and we found out that the top 3 industries in the region in terms of aquaculture is the processing and production of blue swimming crab and of shrimp. And with the interviews of the Philippine Crab Processors Association, as well as small-scale processing industries in the region, we found out that some of these processing industries actually throw the waste of the processing back into the sea. And on top of the waste that is being thrown into the sea, there's also the problem of the prevalent use of fertilizers, antimicrobials, antibiotics, and other chemicals thrown into the aquaculture systems, which exacerbates the water quality problems. So in order to address the problem that is faced by our aquaculture industry, our team develops the environment-friendly and sustainable technologies, not only to reduce waste, but also to address the monitoring and removal of pollutants in bodies of water. So the technology that we develop minimizes the amount of waste thrown into the marine ecosystem by converting this into nanoprobes and nanocatalysts. These nanoprobes and nanocatalysts can be used to detect the presence of chemical contamination in aquaculture. And once we detect what is present in the aquaculture, we can then remove this contaminant or degrade these contaminants by catalysis. So in our project, we know that the Philippines is teeming with marine resources that can serve as feedstock for the biorefinery of valuable chemicals and materials. So we have shrimp shells, we have crab shells, we have scales, we also have mollusk shells. These are readily available. These are unutilized materials or less utilized, but this can be used as raw materials for the synthesis of carbon quantum dots. So carbon quantum dots are promising materials. They have size confinement effects, and these are quasi-spherical materials that are less than 10 nanometers. They have wide range absorption and emission properties. They are water soluble, less toxic, biocompatible, and they are also easy to synthesize and easy to functionalize. And a lot of the carbon materials that are in literature are already applied in sensing, catalysis, bioimaging, and electronics. So for the start of our project, we focus first on processing shrimp shells, especially the chitin that can be derived from shrimp shells. So what we do is to develop sustainable methodologies to convert this fishery waste into functional NCQDs. So what we do is basically do a green chemistry approach to convert the chitin into NCQDs. And then once we have synthesized the NCQDs, we characterize to understand the processing structure properties of NCQDs. So ano yung effect ng processing and structure to the properties of the NCQDs that we develop. So this is the non-enabling disclosure. We started with chitin from waste shrimp shells and then convert this into carbon quantum dots. Our product is around greenish black in nature. They are revealed to be rich in functional groups, mostly oxygen and nitrogen functional groups. And our characterization, based on the morphological characterization, shows that our carbon quantum dots developed are less than 5 nanometers in size. Our histogram shows it's 1 to 4 nanometers. The SEM and the AFM shows that they are quasi-spherical. Our XRD shows that they are amorphous, and the characteristic of an amorphous carbon network. The structural property shows that our material is composed of mostly carbon, decorated by 10% oxygen and 6% nitrogen. Our IR shows characteristic of C double bond C, C double bond O, CO, OH, and NH functional groups. And this is basically corroborated by our X-ray photoelectron spectra, which shows the presence of these functional groups as well as the presence of pyridinic, pyrrolic, and graphitic N. For the optical properties, our materials show that the absorption peak is around 270 and 330 nanometers. And also at the emission peak is at 450 nanometers. So from the photographs of our quantum dots, you can see that they respond to different colors of laser pointer. So it emits a different color when excited by a 405 nanometer laser pointer, 532 nanometer laser pointer, and 635 nanometer laser pointer. Okay. To test the application of our quantum dots, first on the catalysis, so we tested the interaction with different dyes. So we started with malachite green, and then we also did it with methyl orange and methylene blue. Now, in the case of malachite green, we can see that upon addition of our quantum dots to malachite green and exposing it to sunlight, we see a decrease in the absorbance of malachite green, showing that there is some interaction and there's also some decolorization that is happening when the solution of malachite green is added with quantum dots. And so this is the effect of the increasing time of exposure to sunlight when a solution of malachite green is added with quantum dots. Unfortunately, for the methyl orange and methylene blue, we have not seen any drastic changes in the concentration of the methyl orange and methylene blue when added with quantum dots. So take note that we don't have any metal oxide decorating our quantum dots. So we're only using this carbon quantum dots as a catalyst for the degradation of dyes. Okay. So the significant impacts of our study shows that we have, again, we have trained DS chemistry students, or 3 of them, where we have trained 2 Master of Chemistry students and then a young chemistry faculty and also a young researcher of the department. We have already drafted an article to be submitted for publication, but we have put that on hold because we are still processing our invention disclosure. We already have one utility model resulting from the previous project that is related to this. And we're now currently doing the invention disclosure for the results of this project. And we have also have a collaboration with the University of Saskatchewan. So those equipment that we don't have here, like the XPS, we send our samples to the University of Saskatchewan for them to analyze it for us. And then, of course, we have applied, this is a shared trademark application by the different projects that I spearheaded. So this is ABAMOS, which is a valorization of agri-fisheries materials using opportune science. So this is to reflect the research processes that we are doing in the departments who are looking into the valorization of the different materials that are abundant in our locality and then converting them into high-value materials. With respect to the SDGs that our project is addressing, we have the clean water and sanitation because we're trying to apply our materials to the detection and removal of pollutants in marine ecosystems. Of course, we have responsible consumption and production because we wanted to minimize the waste produced by our processing industries in the region. And then at the same time, these two are actually related to the climate action as well. And these are our references. And let me end my talk with a quote from Michelle Schwartz. So it says that people and their technologies are just as much part of our ecologies as our nature and the physical features of our planet. So we wanted to espouse the idea of having that responsibility when we are developing technologies such that we are actually doing positive impact to society. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ponce. Ang galing, ano? I think, again, VP Sinch and AVP Carla and the EMC are very happy about the results of our project leaders, no? So, okay, so before we start the 5-minute questioning, I just want to read the previous comments that I missed. For Dr. Joey Ocon, amazing po ang good model for the different CUs, no? So this is coming from Dr. Eva Marie Cotionco de La Paz, and I would like to thank and recognize Dr. Eva Marie, Dr. Cotionco. She is acting as my assistant, you know, so she sends all these chats to my Viber. And then from Professor Servancia, congratulations to the team of Dr. Joey. Sulit na sulit ang gobyerno sa inyo. And then for Dr. Nuesca, regarding the clinical trials, please connect with Manila NIH, National Institutes of Health of UP Manila for the clinical trials. Newly approved by BOR po ang NIH Clinical Trials and Translation Center just this March. So this is a very, very important information for those who would like to do some clinical trials. Dr. Al, meron ka ng pwedeng clinical trial. So, okay, so let's proceed with the questions for Dr. Ponce. And I see Dr. Al raising his hand.
Thank you, Doc Eva, for the invitation. Yes, we will do clinical trial eventually, hopefully in person shortly, with some of the CBOL projects of Doc Ewang. But definitely some of the Dr. Nuesca's drug delivery. But we will probably have to consult the doctors what we should be loading it with, because that's the important part is the user need in that particular development. And I think Dr. Nuesca is right for a similar University Innovation Fellow partnership with Diliman and UP Manila, which we've been doing actually quite aggressively in this last 2 years since the COVID started. A lot of the projects of the PTBDO assistants are focused on CBOL projects of Doc Ewang, as well as some of the remote sensing telehealth telemetry work of I saw Nat Orellasa over here, Dr. Magno, so several. But I think we can save that 20% tomorrow. But definitely, yes, let's do more clinical moving forward. But I'm going to switch now to Connie on it. Good job on getting oriented, even though you hardly had a month to prepare before the lockdown. I like the applications that you focused. I did work with Kaito-san also early on, and metal chelate technologies with glass. Part of the challenges indeed are being able to stabilize the products upon exposure and be able to recharge them after you've done your, for lack of a better word, cleaning. Paano mo i-regenerate yung material and properly dispose.
Right now, we're still having, we're still doing preliminary experiments on the catalytic performance. So it's still just added to a dispersion of the different contaminants. Some of the people I have trained, like Glenn Suelan and John Pierre Montesilio, our faculty and young researcher, are already incorporating this into substrate so that it can be more applicable to real settings. So we are incorporating this into glass. We are also incorporating into plastics and some of the materials that we can apply in aquaculture systems for cleaning of, say, pond aquaculture water, or in rivers where we can actually use it for cleaning some of the, say, for instance, if there's a hospital that releases contaminants like antibiotics into the bodies of water, then we can use substrate with the quantum dots incorporated in them to do the cleanup. But we're still doing preliminaries on those. And but they're being incorporated into matrices.
Yeah, the only other additional that I wanted to know, because I'm aware also of one of the STRIDE projects that we funded, 5 years ago with Doc Mag Vasquez. So over CRE, I think, direct TTBDO office. He does work on titanium oxide platforms and also plasma polymerized materials that you can easily use as a substrate for your quantum dots. So that's
I'm actually not using titanium dioxide because, like, we don't have that much titanium dioxide. China is the highest.
No. I mean, he was doing titanium dioxide deposition, but instead of using titanium dioxide, using a material for his plasma polymerized substrates. That's what I meant. Thank you.
So yeah, we're using other substrates aside from titanium dioxide because, like, it's not that available in here.
Yeah, but because the beauty of your material is indeed it's locally available, and actually Mag Vasquez has already spoken to several Bulacan fishery applications, and I think rather than indeed using titanium dioxide for some of those decontamination on the fish ponds, maybe you can do your field testing very quickly if you get in touch with him. Again, this is one UP. That's what we do. We try to branch out applications of one CU to the other. And I think if you can demonstrate that quickly, definitely there are a lot of applications in Visayas, as we are aware when we visited you guys for Visayas after Akambayan. Visayas was the next trip. But good job, and I'm hoping that you actually grow your group. I know it's very challenging to be in Iloilo and Yagao, but I hope you'll attract more PhD and master students moving forward. Definitely. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you very much, Dr. Al. We have several congratulatory notes for Doc Connie from VP Sinch, from Nathaniel Anyasco, from Dr. Babaran, from Dr. Eileen Chong, Dr. Chong. So we look forward to more, itong trabaho ni Connie. Ano siya, part ito ng circular economy, and so this is very important, and yung suggestions ni Dr. Serafica na you can possibly have different applications pa for this technology. And our young tawag dito, ang audience natin are learning a lot from this. The products of research are of course, publications are very important, but the technologies that can be patented, can be protected by IPs. You mentioned utility model, and you even have a trademark, Avamos. Grabe, no? And I think even our earlier mga researchers, meron din silang mga ganun no? So now regarding, can you give us an idea to be able to get a sizable amount, I don't remember the amount of the materials that you get. How much fisheries waste materials do you need? So we can say na, yeah, makakatulong talaga sa paggamit ng waste materials. Meron ba kayo nung ano? Do you need a ton to get 10 milligrams or what?
Hindi naman po. The beauty of fluorescence techniques is that you only need a very small amount because it's a very sensitive technique. So even if we get probably like milligram quantities of materials, the power of that milligram quantities is already very great because fluorescence techniques are used for single molecule spectroscopy techniques. So it's really that very sensitive. It's used for tagging in say yung mga kits na tinitingnan natin that are PCR based, those are based on fluorescence. So although our percentage yield is only 6%, it's already good enough. Of course, if it can be improved to higher percentage, it would even be better. But yeah, we're happy with the 6% yield that we can get. So say, for instance, if we have 100 grams, we can get 6 grams of our quantum dot. So that's the current yield that we have right now.
Okay, malaki yun sa nakukuha ko pag ako'y nagpo-purify ng protein, ano? So, are there other questions from our chat box? If none, so we thank Dr. Ponce, Concepcion Ponce from UP Visayas. We were rooting for you, you know, when you submitted your proposal. We were rooting for Prof. Joey. We were rooting for Prof. Nuesca. You know, pag nakita namin, may potential talaga to, no? And hindi nabigo ang inyong EEMC and AVP Carla, DP Sinch, you know. So thank you very much to our 3 speakers, to Dr. Ponce, to Dr. Ocon, and to Dr. Nuesca. So I think that ends the first session now. And so what do we do now?
Thank you, PMA. Thank you very much, PMA, for leading us
Thank
in
you
our
very
first
much. Thank you.
Presentations this afternoon. Again, we congratulate Dr. Joey, Dr. Nuesca, and Dr. Ponce, and your research teams for your accomplishments. So we're now through with the first session, but before we proceed to our session 2, we will have a 10-minute break. We still have 4 presentations in our next session, and our chair will be Professor Didi Rose Tupe. So see you after the 10-minute break. right, we hope you have taken your bio or your coffee breaks. So let's resume the second round of presentations for today. Let's welcome our chair for this session, Professor from the Department of English and Comparative Literature. Let's welcome Professor Lily Rose Lopez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Research Symposium. This session is devoted to the arts and the social sciences, and I think we have equally interesting presentations for you for this session. The first session is entitled Digital Development, Printing on Demand, and I-Distribution of Sora, the graphic novel of the life of Melchora Aquino, a perception study of our nation's history, culture, struggle for independence, and identity of Filipino women in the open distance e-learning framework. Haba ng title. Okay, but it explains what the research is about. And our presenter is Dr. Grace Alfonso, professor from the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, UP Open University, and Professor Emeritus at the Film Institute of College of Mass Communications, UP Diliman. So ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Gigi.
I'm Dr. Grace Alfonso, the program leader of the SORA project titled Digital Development, Printing on Demand, and I-Distribution of SORA, the graphic novel of the life of Melchora Aquino, a perception study of our nation's history, culture, struggle for independence, and identity of Filipino women in the open distance e-learning framework. Our team is composed of 5 project leaders: Dr. Melinda Bandalaria, Dr. Melinda Lumanta, Dr. Jean Saludades, Dr. Alexander Flor, and Dr. Primo Garcia, who will elaborate the different research components of the projects later on. Supporting the research team are staff whose names appear on the screen. I will give you an overview of the project, our accomplishments so far, and what we want to achieve by the end of the project. The project reclaims the role of Tandang Sora and the many other unrecognized Filipino women in the struggle for national independence through the creation of the graphic novel Sora, ang babaeng para sa bayan. The project involves historical research for the creation of the graphic novel in print and electronic formats, as well as the conduct of performative, symbolic, perception, and discursive studies on the design, development, and use of the graphic novel for teaching and popularizing history. The project hopes to contribute the following: popularize history and claim space for the women's perspective in history through the graphic novel, examine how graphic novel-based massive open online course, or MOOC, can be tapped as a delivery mode for understanding and interrogating historical and contemporary issues. Demonstrate how a pluridisciplinary approach can be adopted to integrate the intersecting works of art, design, empirical research, and open and distance e-learning. The project has 5 research components, which include: number 1, the historical and production design research and analysis of Melchora Aquino's life as the basis of the graphic novel. 2, story writing and visual plot planning of the graphic novel and its full production. 3. Performative, symbolic, and discursive studies of the graphic novel as an e-learning material publication. 4. Web dissemination of graphic novel as a MOOC. Number 5, the MOOC's assessment and perception study highlighting our nation's history and culture while struggling for independence and the identity of Filipino women using the Odell framework. The project has the following expected outputs: historical research, graphic novel, massive open online course, performative, symbolic, perception, and discursive researches. We began the historical research in 2019 and completed it a year later. The manuscript started with a storyline and outlining of the plot. It has been structured into 77 sequences. I started the writing and the development after an exhaustive interview with the granddaughters and grandsons of Tandang Sora. Based on this research, we prepared design studies and drawings to come up with the paintings per frames. We did shoots of the scenes based on the manuscript, then edited and digitized those during the post-production as aid for the final paintings per frame. Each frame went through studies, drawings, coloring, and inking as foundations of the final paintings. We then prepared the mock-up layouts. Simultaneously, the digitization, drawing, and coloring of the remaining frame sequences are also now being done. We hope to finalize the graphic novel, both the electronic and print versions, by the end of April 2022. Once we have finalized the graphic novel, work on the development of massive open online course on the life of Tandang Sora will start. The multimedia version of the MOOC is targeted to be released in June 2022. Course delivery is in July 2022. While developing the graphic novel, we have also started doing the performative and symbolic research. The perception and discursive research will begin upon the delivery of the MOOC. To know more about the other research components, here are our project leaders.
Performative research is one of the two approaches being employed in conducting the perception study component of the SORA project. The performative social science approach employs the processes and tools from the arts and the humanities to understand social life. In the SORA project, the objective is to involve the subject, the graphic novel artist herself, in provoking the audience's thoughts by showing the process involved in the production of the graphic reportage. This component is recording everything that the artist has been using in the creation of Sora, including the artist's interaction with the materials she has been collecting and visualizing. It is complemented with reflective dialogue, interviews, and artistic audit, which, according to Haseman in 2006, refers to connecting the artist's work with both earlier and contemporaneous productions, which contribute to the overall research context.
How is the historical Tandang Sora different from the essential Tandang Sora? Melchora Aquino, also known as Tandang Sora, was a product of a social movement inspired to a certain extent by Freemasonry. This context has been lost in historical accounts of the female heroine. With the reconstruction of Tandang Sora through Grace Javier Alfonso's graphic novel, a more authentic three-dimensional persona of the heroine would arise based on the in-depth research, conceptualization, and visualizations attendant to the creative process. Will this persona be consistent with the context wherein Tandang Sora emerged? The paper will conduct a semiotic analysis of the visual and textual rendering of Gigi Alfonso's graphic novel sequences and identify the parallels to be found between Tandang Sora's persona and the Masonic thought that partially defined the Philippine revolutionary movement in the late 1800s.
This component of the study will assess the effectiveness of a graphic novel about a historical figure as a teaching material in both print and electronic formats. Standard indicators of an effective material will be measured through a perception questionnaire. A two-group pre-post research design will be employed and measures of learning obtained. To one group, a print copy will be administered, and to the other, the e-format will be administered. Results are expected to input into the development of the MOOC.
The importance of knowledge about history cannot be discounted, given its role in shaping the future. Even analytics rely on historical data to project or predict future events and serve as basis for making decisions. But history should not be for students of the formal education system alone. The audience or the learners, depending on the context, can be the general public, simply those who just want to learn. It is in this context that this research will be conducted, that is investigating another platform, the massive open online course, on two aspects: its role in popularizing Philippine history and its role to supplement the formal teaching of history in schools. The following research objectives will be pursued: look at the profile of the learners who enrolled in the SORA MOOC, find out their reasons for enrolling in the MOOC, and determine their learners' satisfaction on the different aspects of MOOC. First, on the different interactions proved to facilitate learning. These are the learner-learner interaction, learner-content interaction, and learner-teacher interaction. And second, the learner satisfaction on the different learning activities integrated into the learning design. This research also aims to provide recommendations on the use of massive open online courses to popularize Philippine history, and as mentioned earlier, to supplement the teaching of Philippine history in schools.
As previously presented, the MOOC on Melchora Aquino will require learners to participate in asynchronous online discussions and/or submit assignments to promote learner content and learner-learner interaction. While doing so, they are expected to take up and assign positions for themselves and others. The others may refer to individuals or groups that may exist in and outside of the graphic novel. Using this course analysis of the learner's posts or submissions, the study shall unpack the identities created by the learners for themselves and others in their writing practices, as well as the outcomes arising from these identity-making acts. The study shall then draw implications of using the graphic novel-based MOOC format for identity making and learning about historical and contemporary issues online.
By the end of this year, we hope to be able to do the following: launch the exhibit of the graphic novel in printed and e-formats, delivery of the MOOC, submission of research project reports. This ends our presentation here, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation, Dr. Alfonso. I
Thank
think I think at the end of the day, we want our students, or anyone who will read your graphic novel to say, Melchora Aquino or Tandang Sora rocks. I think that's what we want to. That's what we want to do. But also, we have to remind our listeners here that history and literature, these are the two disciplines that have not been given the importance that they were given in the past. And I think this graphic novel addresses this problem. So it combines the arts and history and makes history very palatable and exciting to anyone who will read it. Okay, so let me just read some congratulatory notes in the chat. So congratulations from Dr. Serafika, from who else? From Adrian Mendizabal, from Dean Ami Ramolete, from Vice President Elena Pernia. So these are the people who are congratulating you. So I have a very short question for Dr. Gigi.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we cannot record everything in Tandang Sora's life in one graphic novel. So I was wondering, what aspects of her life did you emphasize in your graphic novel? Since I think most of your audience will be young people, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the graphic novel is now a reading material in senior high school. So we didn't have that during my time. So now they're reading graphic novels in senior high school. So what aspects of Tandang Sora's life did you emphasize in the graphic novel?
Well, since it's a novel, there are quite a number of, I would say, milestones in her life that were shown. But what is important is that she is not in the periphery. She's really part of some of the planning and also logistics, and also taking care of course, that we know. That's quite a popular idea about Melchora Aquino, that she was using all her kamalig for treating the wounded soldiers. And but I think the phase also in when she was in Guam, the Marianas, where she was actually probably encountered, all right, Apolinario Mabini and so on. But there will be a discourse on because the son is a Katipunero and very close to Bonifacio, and then seeing Apolinario Mabini belonging to another camp with General Aguinaldo and all that, the dynamics. And so therefore, as a woman, as a mother, meron mga points na ganon. So I think aside from that, I would say there will be some symbolic readings in this research. And it comes out there, maybe subliminally. And in fact, in the research, we'll find out whether they were able to get these ideas. Ganun po, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Prof. Lily, for that question.
Okay, there are more congratulatory comments here from VPAA, Cynthia Bautista. Okay, there's a question. How will the general public be made aware of access to the program? I guess when it finishes. So when it's finished, how will the general public access it? You will be announcing
yes, ma'am.
it.
When we do our exhibition, di ba, ma'am? Lahat tayo nandun, and we will do a virtual and also a hybrid. So nandun din yung mga gawa, nandun yung ating print, at nandun din yung the e-version. Tapos papalabasin po.
Okay.
Hopefully we can do a TikTok or something about
Okay, so watch out for announcements. I'm sure there will be a announcement regarding its launch, right? So
yes,
sometime this year. Okay, so I just want everyone to know that I've seen the panels of this graphic novel, and it's really, really good, really, really artistic. So we all look forward to it. Okay, so are there any more questions? Ayan, wala na pong questions. So we want to congratulate Dr. Gigi for this wonderful, wonderful project. This will make history, a delicious dish for many of our students. So kamisa natutulog na sila pag history, no? But this will make history very, very much alive and interesting. So thank you, Dr. Gigi, and congratulations to your team for making this work. Salamat po, salamat. From Sari Dalena, thank you. Congratulations daw. Ayan, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we can move on to our next presentation. This time it's film, it's cinema. And the title of the presentation, also for pedagogical purposes, is Cinema for Education, Rationalizing the Philippine Audiovisual Industry to Promote Inclusive Education through Film Literacy. And presenting this research is Professor Nicolas de Ocampo, Associate Professor from the Film Institute, UP Diliman. So take it away, Prof. Nick.
Good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to present to you my research project that is entitled Cinema for Education, Rationalizing the Philippine Audiovisual Industry to Promote Inclusive Education Through Film Literacy. The research aims to investigate the role that motion pictures play in the production of knowledge. It seeks to develop an image-based education in the age of digital technology. The unit represented is the UP Film Institute in the College of Mass Communication. I am Associate Professor Nicolas de Ocampo, and the project leaders composed my team are Dr. Jerome Buenviaje, Dean, College of Education, Dr. Lemuel Aragones, former Director, Institute of Environmental Science and Meteorology, College of Science, Dr. Flodette Meidatuin, former Chair, Art Studies Department, College of Arts and Letters, and Professor Sari Delena, former Director, UP Film Institute. The project staff whose names appear here consists of an administrative officer, Jacqueline Manalo, and the rest are graduate students taking up Master of Arts in Media Studies, specializing in film from the UP Film Institute. A few undergraduate students who excelled in making films were also employed, and one came from the Library and Information Science to manage project records. In addition to students from UP, the project accepted interns who earned credits by training on the job. They were students taking up communication and animation courses from the De La Salle University College of St. Benilde, I-Academy, University of the East, Manila, and UP Baguio. Word got around about the quality of training that students got from their internship program with our project that new interns applied for their OJT with us as well. They came from the University of Makati, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, and the Far Eastern University. For a brief background of the project, the research program that I presently undertake with my team seeks to promote an image-based education to complement the traditional word-based production of knowledge. It introduces a new philosophy of education in the form of edusemiotics, with the hope of innovating the knowledge industry. Cinema becomes a tool in the development of a pedagogy that responds to the new consciousness and practices brought about by the digital revolution. The sudden shock the educational community experienced when the pandemic outbreak struck in 2020 showed us how ill-prepared the educational system was to shift into the digital platform. While technological hardware was adequately sourced to provide continuity to the routine of teaching and learning, what was sorely lacking was the pedagogical adaptation that needed to happen when the paradigm shift happened from the physical to the virtual. This is where this research project finds its inspiration. While for many, it was business as usual by merely uploading the analog data that formed our courses and lessons in normal times, this project seeks to innovate by finding new methods of teaching with a shift to virtual learning and distance education. Specifically, the research program envisions a new audiovisual industry that will address challenges posed by an educational system in need of pedagogical innovation, not only in times of the pandemic, but in response to the changing technological landscape. Summarily, the research program has the following set of objectives: use of film in the production of knowledge, creation of a new audiovisual industry, enhance the country's intellectual infrastructure, reinvent cinema to serve educational needs, create a digital library and archive for educational products, construct an interactive online website serving as a digital resource, provide new employment for communications graduates, and stimulate a holistic educational ecology that will make learning interdisciplinary. Accomplishments that have so far been made cover areas of production, publication, public lectures, and project enhancement. In the area of production, 9 educational short films are being produced. By March 30, we have finished the following films: Puppet Passion, a puppetry drama by Teatro Mulat, directed by former CAL Dean Dr. Amihan Ramulete, and based on the script by National Artist for Theater, my former teacher, Dr. Amelia La Peña Bonifacio. Martial Law, a documentary that semiotically deconstructs the military lexicon of films made during the period of martial law, contraposed with the political films made by national artists for film Lino Brocca. The documentary was directed by myself. Terazila, a 3D animation that takes up the dangers posed by land abuse, written and directed by myself. And Bulosan Hernandez, a mixed genre film homage of the life and works of two literary giants, national artists for literature, Carles Bulosan and Amado Hernandez, directed by Professor Sari Dalen. Our forthcoming accomplishments for the remaining quarters are 2 films on the history of Philippine cinema, 1, Philippine Alternative Cinema, a documentary on the country's non-mainstream films, and Golden Age of Philippine Cinema, a documentary on the period of the movie studio system and the classics that were produced. I direct both films based on the film history books that I have published. Mangroves, a documentary on the ecological significance of the estuarian habitation of plants and animals, directed by Dr. Lemuel Aragones and Dr. Flaudet May-Datuin. Hydrozilla, another 3D animation about water conservation, which I will direct. And finally, Astro Pinay, a sci-fi film that explores gravity and intergalactic travel, having a Pinay as an astronaut, written and directed by the country's only sci-fi director, Keith Sika. The vignettes of films you earlier saw at the beginning of this presentation came from the films we are presently producing. In addition, there will be a publication of 9 ancillary instructional materials. These are course packs that will provide corresponding instructional materials to each of the 9 films that will be produced. They will contain a set of teacher's manual, student's worksheet, instructional videos, PowerPoints, visual guides, among others. They will be available for online use, hard drive, and hard copies. Even before the research is over, I have started to conduct public lectures in order to help validate results of some of the researches that have been conducted. On March 5, I gave a lecture entitled Popcorn at the Barracks, Pinoy Movies and Their Science Systems. The webinar was sponsored by the Ayala Foundation, U.S. Embassy in the Philippines, and Manila Bulletin. In the lecture, I presented some initial results of our study analyzing the role that semiotics play in the films of Lino Brocca, contraposed with the movies produced during the period of martial law. Touching on the research we made on alternative cinema, I gave another webinar, Understanding Philippine Alternative Cinema, Its History, Aesthetics, and Politics. It was held on March 18 for the entire communication students of the Manila Taytana colleges and for a workshop sponsored by communication students from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. Lastly, on March 21, I made a final presentation of my research project financed by CHED. This research fully complements my EIDR grant, as my CHED Salikha project provides similar goals in applying cinema for education, only that it is for the K-12 level. The project titled Devising a Participative Cinema for Inclusive Education, if taken together with my EIDR project, will provide a holistic approach that will complete the pedagogical vision of having motion pictures to serve educational purposes. Similar to the EIDR project, there are also 9 educational short films that were produced with the Salikha grant. The films cover study areas required by DepEd, such as media and information literacy, philosophy, life sciences, arts in the regions, human personality, and lessons in filmmaking. It is in this research that I was able to actualize my idea of having instructional tools to accompany the films that were produced. In short, through the CHED-funded research, I had achieved a K-12 component of what I want to achieve for the tertiary level in the EIDR research. Additionally, I am proud to say that I was able to convince an international organization, the Nippon Foundation, to share its video library of more than 100 hours on the subject of Asian ecology for the EIDR project. It likewise includes the availability of the 6-hour, 5-country documentary series on Asia's water ecology. The video footage and archive were taken through a grant I received to research for 3 years and make video documentaries in Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. From my personal collection, I am also willing to donate films in order to jumpstart a digital library, which I envision to be the legacy of this research project. This includes the 6-hour documentary series on the history of Philippine cinema, which covers the evolution of cinema in the country over the past 100 years. Other potential collections may come from schools and universities offering film and communication courses. Noted here is the collection of the UP Film Institute, which has a collection of 750 short films produced as theses or class productions. These are now kept in the UPFI Film Archive. The films are technically owned by the university. And so what can we do with this collection? These short films are untapped audiovisual educational resource. The impact of this project is mainly aimed at education and cinema. Cinema for Education envisions the retooling of cinema to service one of the country's greatest needs, education. This demands for a pedagogical reinvention that institutionalizes the use of motion pictures in knowledge production. It makes use of the advancements brought about by edusemiotics to enhance learning and education. Its holistic vision can apply to all branches of education. Cinema for Education offers a third film front that will provide education instead of mere entertainment given by the movie industry and the personal expression by the art house cinema. In this third film front, education takes dominant concern. The classroom is the site of engagement. It is the intent of this project to tap the nationwide network of government agencies like the Film Development Council of the Philippines and the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, DepEd, and SHED, to form a nationwide consortium among universities and schools to introduce edusemiotics in the school curricula and to promote film as a tool for learning. For its outputs and deliverables, the project will produce 9 educational films, 9 ancillary instructional materials, 3 essays to be published in peer-reviewed publications, public lectures and workshops, a digital archive, and an online resource pending future financing, market research, and an edusemiotics research compilation. The SDGs addressed are the following: quality education, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reduced inequalities. The references listed here represent merely a fraction of the research Bible that my team has composed. It has 4 subject areas: philosophy of education, philosophy of cinema, semiotics, and edusemiotics. The titles you read here of books and essays are samples of what have been collected. The rest are on file.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, Prof. Nick. Wala akong masabi, ang ganda ng introduction. Got me mesmerized there by the film. Definitely, your research will change the discourse of the classroom. So it makes me wish that I were a young person again, a young student again, learning science and history and literature through film, not just by reading, but also by watching. So it's really amazing project, no? and really comprehensive. Okay, so there are some comments here. Let me read. Congratulations from Adrian Mendizabal. According to VPAA Elena Pernia, I'm blown away by this, Dr. Nick and team. Very impressive. Very impressive. From VP Cinch, another wow. Congratulations. From Grace Alfonso also, congratulations. Let me see. Astonishing and inspiring from Earl Jackson. Congratulations from Angela Chavez.
From Taiwan.
Madison Base. Congrats. Is that okay? There you go. Oh, okay. So we have one question from the audience. Dr. Serafika, you're raising your hand. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I'm wearing now my non-UP hat, more non-technology commercialization, but still applications. I'm a chairman and the acting executive director for Center for Integrated STEM Education. This is a funded spin-off foundation of Unilab Foundation. And we work with Cheryl Monterola, the NISMED director now of the National Institute of Science and Math Education. And one of the things that came up, indeed, during our discussion is to be able to produce STEM material for convincing our K-12 students to take up STEM. Because right now we're, I think, tracking at around 1/10 or less than 1/10 of our students being able to be interested in STEM. Would you be open, Doc Nick, to talk to us in terms of probably producing a pilot short film, for lack of a better word, maybe our national scientists like Luli Cruz or some of our national academicians in the National Academy as well, to make it more, for lack of a better word, film-like, so that it's not a documentary. It's more engaging. The same way I asked Doc Gigi kanina. It was nice to see. We were together at Aghambayan, and definitely I'm all for science. That's why I'm a little bit shifting the conversation into the science. But really, it's more for being able to entice our students to take up STEM. And in that regards, we would wanted to also look at the, of course, the overlap with the curricula of DepEd, which is our main government agency, as well as the monitoring and evaluation of the learners after they watch the movie, like feedback and comments and maybe a test as well. Because we're doing a similar program for National Quiz Bee with CP David under my other hat on the Philippine American Academy of Science, which is also around that another potential film for our grade 7 naman that is more enticed towards going into TIMS and PISA-like exposure, but more on the type of films. Because I just saw a recent YouTube researcher talking about very short clips now of under 80 seconds or something to that will grab the attention of the younger generation, the millennials and the Z generation. So are you open, I mean, with this kind of collaboration?
I am more, Dr. Surafika, I'm more than open, so open that I think this project, if I may be allowed to say this, must really embrace the entire educational system of this country. And we are even thinking of Southeast Asia, perhaps. The important thing here, sir, is that I think the main contribution, more than anything, of this project is the whole idea of edu-semiotics. There is a philosophy to this. We are not just here to produce and to produce and to produce films, but rather to really find a philosophy, an intersectionality between education and cinema, which we now bring down to the whole, to the specificity of cinema, right, of motion pictures. So in other words, since 1439, when Gutenberg introduced in Europe the printing press, it created an economy, a knowledge economy that has transformed for 5 centuries the kind of knowledge that we have. It was all word-based. We need to learn D-O-G to know it's a dog and it's not ido or it's not aso. All right, so we know that there is a certain complexity in terms of the pedagogy that goes into that. But the point now with cinema is, because of its iconicity, its indexicality and its symbolic potentials, and its lifelike, am I given an extra time? I mean, Dr. Tope, I hope I can have some extra time. But the whole idea now of the image as a source of education, in other words, what we are proposing here, and I do hope that UP will be the hub for this, we can create now what is called as an image-based education. What is that? We are really scraping only the very surface of what this is. The potential is immense right now. It's immense in terms of the pedagogy that will have to go into it, the methodology that goes into it, the instrumentalities that will go into it. I think this calls for a revolution. And I'm sorry, we are from UP. We are by nature, we've been trained to become revolutionaries. And I'm sorry to say that, but I think I will just be able to say this, but an entire system will have to emerge from this. So we do hope to partner with DOST. And of course, we are looking up to UP to further nurture this project, because we believe that it has great potential, that we can go from that very stringent idea of learning a language, first of all, that is foreign. You know, the whole idea of a foreign language coming through the instrumentality of a word, for example. But can we overcome such a obstacle, for example, if we introduce instead images? We do not have any prescriptive issues that can be given right now. We are really, I think, on a period of a breakthrough at the moment. And thank you, EIDR, for supporting this mad project at the time of the pandemic when we cannot even shoot. But sir, I have more to say, and I hope I will be given another platform and an opportunity to really talk about this very important thing that I think UP, you know, even just within its own system, can try to incorporate in terms of its syllabi and curricula. So yes, sir, I'm very open. I look forward to an invitation from your organization.
Okay. I'm actually deluged by comments here.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's so many comments here. And one question. So Isaiah, can I address just one question? Just let me read it out. And then Professor Nick can choose whether to answer or not. So the question is, would you think you can break through Netflix in terms of creating new, more innovative films or Netflix series that may somehow compete with the Korean or American series?
I have a better idea, and I call the attention of our university. If there is Netflix, why can't we put up our Upflix or UPflix?
Yeah.
In other words, we have to create our own platform. So I challenge exactly our educational institution being the leader in this country in terms of knowledge industry to really put up Upflix, not so much to contest the Netflix. We are going to start low, we are going to progress, we are really going to make a breakthrough. Please consider this even for businessmen. And Sir Serafika, listen to this economics that I have. I'm not an economist. I want to make movies, and I'd like to go into education. But sir, as we speak, there are 34 million students who are in school. I cut it down because of the pandemic. We cut it down to 20 million only, sir. Sir, if we were to charge only theoretically, if we charge them 50 pesos times 20 million students who are in great need of this program, and it is a captured market, as you know very well, sir. 20 million times 50 pesos, if you're good in terms of your mathematics, how much is that? It's a 1 billion peso industry only for one film, sir. Only for one film. We have produced 9 films. There are countless of films being produced right now in every island in this country. This is the age of the short film, and therefore let us maneuver it towards education. Sir, I've got a strategy that, you know, because of my limited time, I cannot really talk. But sir, there is an economic potential. SM wanted to partner with me before, but it was too early. That was 10 years ago. He already, I cannot mention one of the C's, who's got a 2.8 billion in his head right now because in the latest Forbes, whatever. But anyway, he wanted to partner with me because he saw exactly the potential of this. Education Secretary Luistro wanted this to already be adopted, but then there was Undoy. All right, so all of these things, I think the time has now come, and EIDR will have to really guide us. We don't know what happens after this, but sir, I think I have taken off the lead on something that is very exciting and very useful for the intellectual infrastructure of this country. We cannot just talk about physical infrastructures like roads. How many billions are we spending to build? Why don't we include in the build the intellectual infrastructure of this country? And I think the dividends will be countless and will be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Nick. Okay, thank you for the time extension. And we will end on that note. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm sure you deserve, you know, a webinar of your own regarding the topic. Okay, so we're gonna shift now to the next presenter. The next topic is blending of multimedia approach and Satoyama Satumi principles for building climate smart communities. And our next presenter is Dr. Ricardo Bagarinao, Professor and Dean of the Faculty of Education from UP Open University. Dr. Bagarinao, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I am Ricardo P. Bagarinao, taking the lead for the research program titled Blending of Multimedia Approach and Satoyama Satomi Principles for Building Climate Smart Communities, implemented by the Faculty of Management and Development Studies, UP Open University. Blending because it takes into consideration both the concept of the harmony of human-nature interactions and the current technologies now in developing climate-smart communities through capacity building and education. The program is a collaboration between UP Open University and UP Los Baños and some universities in the study sites. It consists of 4 projects. Project 1 focuses on the floral and faunal assessment of the study sites and the analysis on the use of these resources by the communities in these areas. Project 2 assesses the disaster preparedness of the households, taking into considerations their knowledge, attitude, and practices of these households. Project 3 assesses the resilience of the communities in the study sites, as well as establishes community well-being index. And lastly, Project 4 focuses on the capacity building of the households, the youth, and the local government units in the sites. And this is our team, okay? The different leaders and team members of those projects. The program actually is targeted to contribute to the attainment of the following Sustainable Development Goals. First, we have the SDG number 4, which is on education. We have SDG 13 on climate change action, SDG 14, life below water, SDG 15, life on land, and also SDG 17 on partnerships, specifically to address the impacts of climate change. Maybe the most important realities that we have at present are the rapidly changing technologies and the increasing intensity of climate change impacts. Though these technologies are making our lives more comfortable and have contributed much to the efficiency of our works, they are also bringing with them, and maybe on their development, some significant threats to our environment, one of which is their impacts on the global climate. Climate change has become a central issue in any development discourses, not only locally, but also internationally. And we have seen how the impacts of climate change have damaged several communities throughout the globe. This calls for a two-pronged approach, one that is focused on mitigation, which is somehow expected to reduce the gaseous emission of carbon to the atmosphere, and two, that is focused on adaptation, to allow communities, whether it's social or ecological, become resilient to the effects of the changing climate. And so I think the challenge now for us is to how to balance the advances in technologies and the threat of climate change to create more resilient communities. And this is the reason why this research program was being conceptualized. The program was conceptualized to contribute towards the building of climate smart communities in the country, especially in the Philippines now, where natural disasters or disasters are recurrent. These communities, climate smart communities, are expected to be equipped to meet the changing challenges presented by climate change, according to the National Wildlife Federation in 2016. In general, the program aims to blend multimedia approach and the concepts of Satuyama Satomi, or the idea of harmonizing communities' use of environmental resources with nature in order to build climate smart communities. And specifically, it aims to assess the biophysical environment of the study sites and the community's resource utilization and management, to determine the household's knowledge, attitude, and practices of disaster preparedness, to determine communities' well-being index using proxy indicators, and evaluating existing policies related to enhancing their resilience and well-being, and to develop multimedia materials and guidebooks based on the Satuyama Satomi principles for the capacity building of the youth, the communities, and even the local government units, hoping that the knowledge that they can gain from these materials will be integrated into drafting their development plans. Since the implementation of the program was being affected by the pandemic, we tried to develop some approaches so that we would be able to push through the data collection of the different projects. So we try to establish collaborations with some local universities and agencies in the study sites. By the way, the program was being implemented in 3 locations, one in the Bicol region, one in the Eastern Visayas region and one in the Caraga region. We used two criteria in identifying the study sites. One is the area should be highly vulnerable to disasters, while the other one is it should have Satuyama, Satomi landscapes. No? And specifically, we do the research, okay, in Santo Domingo in Albay, Ormoc City in Leyte, and Butuan City in Agusan del Norte. Okay, and to address the challenges brought about by the pandemic, we established collaborations with Bicol University, Visayas State University, and also Caraga State University. And these universities somehow serve as our on-the-ground partners, who facilitated the various processes necessary for the data collection of the different projects in this program. Indeed, we're grateful to these institutions for their assistance. Without them, maybe we would not be able to get some initial data from our in our study sites. Okay, and also we did some collaboration with the local government units to allow us to do the face-to-face survey and assessment amidst the lockdowns in these areas. And to facilitate the immediate sending of the collected data, we partnered with the University of Plymouth for their software called Landscape Connect. This software is a software that allows the sharing of data real time, while they are being collected. Once the collectors inputted the data into the software, we would be able to access them real time. We also utilized some other programs such as Near Life for the interactive videos and learning materials that are necessary for the online capacity building, and also Freshdesk to manage our communication among the team members and the various institutions, and of course across the study sites. On a per program objective per project accomplishments, we were able to obtain GPs, gratuitous permits in all three sites. And unfortunately, the Bicol, the study site in the Bicol region, we just recently received the approval of our gratuitous permit. But the assessment, however, the assessment activities are yet to be started, specifically in Ormoc City and also in Santo Domingo. But in Butuan City, they are now on the stage of verifying the identified, the observed species in the study site. For the resource utilization and management survey of Project 1, we are still to receive updates from our partner institutions, though we scheduled to do this activity during the first quarter of this year. And for Project 2, we're almost done with our data collection, and hopefully our, again, partners from the ground would be able to send us the data soon. And although in, I think in Butuan City, we're almost, we're done, and we're starting now to input the data to the statistical tool that we are using in the analysis, okay? For Project 3, we are, the survey is still ongoing. At the same time, there are some cleaning of data that is being done for the initial data that our partners had collected from the ground. For Project 4, we're doing some data cleaning of the current survey data, and there is also an ongoing conduct of household and youth surveys in the other study sites, okay? And we're now doing also some initial analysis for the focus group discussion data that were being collected. Now, in terms of significant outputs, Project 1, since it has just started conducting their floral and faunal assessments, particularly in Barangay Masao in Butuan City, and but based on their initial observation, the team was able to observe the presence of the giant Philippine frog, yellow-headed water monitor, and colored kingfisher in the study sites. But there are still other plants and animal species identified and collected in the study area. And our team on the ground is just doing some verifications for these species. And hopefully, when the verification process is done, we would be able to share more of the identified species in all three study sites. Also, we have developed a photo guide for their key informant interviews. And in fact, in 2020, they conducted an online orientation and training on field data collection with the on-site team. Okay. And there were also some workshops being done by our HCI partners, okay, within their respective locality, so that the collectors might be oriented with different methods and procedures that are being utilized for this project. Also, webinars were being conducted to increase awareness in Satuyama Satomi principles as approaches to sustainable management and to capacitate local stakeholders. For Project 2, based on the initial data that we have, we observed that most of the respondents are middle-aged household wives, And I think this is important to note because this would give us an idea as to who should be trained by the local government units for disaster preparedness. And again, this gives us an idea as to who should be empowered to make the household ready for any disaster. Also, again, based on the initial data that we have, we observed that the respondents found disaster as a serious issue. And this could be an attitude that can be tapped by the local government units, when they implement activities related to disaster preparedness. Okay, it may not be too difficult for them to implement these activities, given that these households have that perception towards disaster. And also, almost all of them perceive that their households are prepared for any disasters. But if you're going to look at to consider the materials that should be there in the household to make them prepared for any disaster, only about 60% had actually these things available in their households. Okay, but again, almost all of them had said they are prepared for any disaster. Again, these observations may change when we will have the complete data from all of our study sites. For Project 3, we observed that most of the households have actually access to facilities that promote their well-being. This would include barangay healthcare, proper evacuation center, livelihood programs, and the like, as per the respondents' responses to the survey. And likewise, based on their resilience indicators, they have a computed mean score of 3, which is described as medium resilience level. So there is still a place actually for improving their resilience, okay, based on this report, based on this initial observation. And we are hoping that the blending of the multimedia and Satuyama Satomi principles can contribute to the improvement of such resilient level. Okay. For Project 4, based on the results or based on the initial data that we have, usually we observe that youth have basic digital literacy skills and access, well, obviously because they are exposed to these modern technologies, but we observe that they still need some capacity building programs, especially on ICT use and internet use. And most of the respondents have used and are proficient in using smartphones and social media. But when they are asked about some thoughts on climate smart communities, most of them are not familiar with the term. Okay. And in terms of the focus group discussion, our initial data provided us or indicated that local government units had acknowledged actually the importance for a multi-sectoral approach in addressing climate hazards. This multiple multi-sectoral approach should include the individual, the communities, and all other agencies, including the government. Okay. And also the results indicated that there is a need for post-training enforcement of disaster risk reduction and management and climate change adaptation measures of these different local government units. And again, this might be an opportunity for us to introduce the principles of Satuyama Satomi so that they can be integrated into their practices and also into their development plans. And as well as enhancing the disaster risk reduction management and climate change adaptation measures of these local government units. And these initial results actually have been presented by the team handling the Project 4. They presented these initial results in an international conference. And well, anyway, these are our initial findings based on the amount of the data that we've gathered so far from the 3 sites, and hopefully we will be able to share more about this work once we have completed the data collection and analysis. Okay, so hopefully if there's still another research symposium where we can present by then the complete picture of the findings of this research program. Okay, so these are some of our references utilized in these presentations. Again, thank you very much for your time and attention. Good day, everyone, and God bless.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Bagarinao. I think that is the most timely of the researches, given its focus on disaster management, right? So, tinamaan ako doon, I thought I'm ready, but I don't think I am, So I think everybody thinks he or she is ready, but when the time comes, hindi pala, no? So I think we will learn much from your research. Okay, so there's some congratulation messages here from VPAA Cinch Bautista, Nathaniel Anyasco, Grace Alfonso. So congrats daw sa inyo. Yeah, so I'm just wondering what happens to those communities where, you know, Wi-Fi is absolutely absent. Like, you know, how can they be reached, no, by any knowledge of, you know, disaster preparation?
Yeah, opo. Actually, it's a challenge, no? When we're going to use yung online learning platform for disseminating this information. But maybe we can have some other modalities, no, that somehow can disseminate this information to this kind of communities. For instance, based on the survey, most of the respondents have smartphones, no? So maybe through text, messaging, or other platform, no? Offline platform, for instance, na they can install in their smartphones, no? And can be utilized in order to disseminate this information. Maybe that could also be looked into, no? And yung pinaka, no, is collaborations with the local government, even up to the barangay level. And we can provide the print copies of this information and be disseminated to the different households so that they would also have this information or knowledge about disaster preparedness.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Serafika?
Yeah, good work. I just want to pass on an information that I came across yesterday, Doc Baggy.
Yes.
It was from actually academician Mahar Lagmay, where he was touting that Climate Change Commission and climate change proposals are very hot today, and there's a lot of funding in the billions apparently. So kindly check with Mahar. I'm sure OB, VP Cinch and AVP Carla can connect you. But it's just the marites for me. Marami raw pera dun sa climate change. And your work is very, very bullseye in that area. So I'm hoping.
Pinakaano dito, sir, is we would like to develop yung multimedia learning resources, no, and open online course so that this information will be accessible to anyone who would like to be enhanced, no, in terms of their knowledge in disaster preparedness and also in harmonizing their activities with nature. No? So I think yun yung pinaka-importante, accessibility of this information. No? And yung pinopropose ng team is to really make this open, no, to the public so that we would be able to really help enhance yung disaster preparedness ng ating mga communities.
Yeah, that would be great actually. Hanap lang tayo ng magbabayad for you. So
yes,
sa climate change, no? Sabi mo si Mahar, baka meron siyang lead for a good one to fund that dissemination and definitely localization. But very, very interesting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, very timely and very necessary. Okay, any other questions? Wala na yata. Okay, so wala kami masabi kasi kailangan talaga yun, no? And I don't think we can convince ourselves that we are prepared. So, you know, we will learn from
hindi ka lalaro,
Oy, ano? Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Bagarinao.
Okay, thank you po.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank also the OVPAA, VP Cinch, no, for the funds for this research, and also AVP Dimalanta, no, for the support and assistance to this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much too. Okay, so we can move on now to the last presenter for this session. The title of the research is Promoting Sustainable Tourism in the Small Islands in the Visayas. And our presenter today is Dr. Cheryl Joy Fernandez, Associate Professor at College of Management of UP Visayas. So Dr. Fernandez, you can take the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maayong hapon sa tanan. I'm Cheryl Choi from the University of the Philippines, Visayas, and I will share our study promoting sustainable tourism development of small islands in the Visayas. The project is in collaboration with the University of the Philippines, Visayas, the University of the Philippines, Baguio, James Cook University in Australia, and Zhejiang University in China. There are also experts from various fields that are involved in the study, such as those working in the areas of marketing, management or business, social studies, and fisheries, as well as some junior faculty members at the College of Management and the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences. We'll look at small islands in our study, and we are interested in studying them in their tourism development because they are interesting case study sites. Small islands are those with less than 10,000 square kilometers of land area and with 500,000 to 1 million residents. They are important economies for national and regional developments. In 2017, there were 1,133 billion stayovers and 38.5 million cruise tourists, which were recorded in 50 small island states all over the world. In the Philippines, we have 41 small islands, and some are recognized as best island destinations. There's also a growing potential for small islands as the main purpose of travel to the country is for leisure and holidays, wherein tourists are usually spending around $33.72 US and stay around 5 nights. So small islands experience many challenges, probably because they are quite small. Most of these challenges are oftentimes connected with coastal areas, but there are also unique issues, pertaining to these economies of scale, their limited space, and of course their connectivity relative to the mainland. So some of the issues recorded are the following. Number one, transparencies and other governance issues, land tenurial and business ownership conflicts, private sector involvement and coordination with the public sector, unanimity among stakeholders, tourism stakeholders, insufficient budget investment and support from the government, as well as environmental integrity. So there is indeed necessity to formulate some sort of holistic strategy to manage the small islands in the country. We follow the sustainable tourism development, and we look at tourism development in the small islands into using 5 different pillars. Pillar 1, tourism policy and governance. Pillar 2, economic performance, investments, and competitiveness. Pillar 3, employment, decent work, and human capital. Pillar 4, poverty reduction and social inclusion. And Pillar 5, sustainability of the natural and cultural environment. So our study has 2 aims. Number 1, examine tourism development of the 4 small islands in the Philippines using the 5 key sustainable elements that I've mentioned earlier. And secondly, to evaluate tourism development of small islands and to offer strategies to improve their sustainability. So we chose 4 small islands in the Visayas, Guimaras, Apo Island, Gigantes Group of Islands, and Malalison in Antique, because they share common tourism economy, especially in terms of tourist attractions, accommodation types, as well as tourist demand. So most of these areas are actually, popular, quite popular with tourists now. Okay. We conducted a mixed method approach wherein we started going to the islands and trying to see what would be the core challenges and situation there. So this helped us in organizing our tourist and resident survey as well as expert interviews. So during our scoping activity, we conducted 8 groups, wherein we have a total of 85 participants coming from local government representatives, community leaders, those from hotel and accommodation establishments, from the education, and of course the transportation sector. We had conducted 36 interviews with various tourism stakeholders as well, representatives from regional, municipal, community governments, and people's organization. Our tourist survey, we had 385 tourists, both foreign and local tourists, and resident surveys from the from the islands as well as from the adjacent islands. So take-off points, usually surrounding barangays or municipalities around the port area in the mainland. Okay, we also used some secondary data to back up some of our evidences. We also conducted dissemination of our survey results as well as the interview results, and we brainstormed on the possible strategies that would help improve the operations of their respective operations as well as in the tourism industry in general. So what are the key results of our study? So our finding shows that the small islands, they find themselves at a very difficult situation across the 5 sustainability pillars. Number 1, ineffective implementation of policies and regulations. Number 2, the residents felt that they are blindsided in the decision-making process, especially those who are poor and vulnerable. Tourism workers face problems relating to workload, just compensation, and work-life balance. Tourists felt that there should be more improvements in the areas of safety and security, tourism attractions, environmental integrity, accommodation in food, and cultural aspects. And lastly, there are also evidence of the negative impacts to the environment and host communities. We also conducted a SWOT and TOS analysis, okay, so that we can answer our second objective, and of course to draw out different strategies. We found out that the tourism stakeholders believe that diverse attractions and enabling environment were major strengths of small islands. The huge demand of East Asian tourists, specifically Koreans and Chinese and Malaysians, also strong linkages to research institutions and other partner institutions, and facilitating tourism development program of the Philippine government were seen as opportunities. The natural environment degradation, inadequate basic utilities, for example, water, okay, presence of tourism work problems, and negative resident perceptions on the implementation and decision-making of tourism strategies were considered as weaknesses. Threats included tourist dissonance, competition, climate change, and other related risks such as natural hazards, increasing number of fixers, and the COVID-19 pandemic. So the threats to the small island tourism development. So the central components of sustainability, economic, socio-cultural, environment, and institutional provide a multidimensional and multi-level structure to ensure the longevity of benefits and minimize the adverse impacts of tourism development. So when looking at the sustainable development goals, our study particularly connects to governance, okay, as reflected on multiple goals such as the SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and SDG 17, partnerships for goals, which means competence, sound policy making, and collaboration among tourism stakeholders. Tourism stakeholders are oftentimes dissatisfied due to the poor distribution of tourism benefits, poor leadership in law enforcement, absence of environmental consciousness of decision makers, decentralized and fragmented governance, and lack of legitimate inclusive participation of stakeholders as it pertains to tourism management. It's also difficult to enhance tourism destination competitiveness due to increased competition, changes in consumer preferences, and new developments in the macro level. So looking at SDG 1, end of poverty, SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Equally important here is a sustainable development goal number six, which aims to promote productive employment and decent work for all industries. So work in the tourism industry, as mentioned earlier, is it kind of reflected on the existing narrative that tourism work is precarious, with problems on unsocial and irregular working hours, frequent overtime work, low job security, and unsafe working conditions. So although there are different accounts of decent work in the tourism, have been relatively few and neglected. Social inequality, SGD 10, and gender, SDG 5, are also eminent concerns, partly because of heterogeneity of tourism stakeholders. So government policies, in order to be sustainable, should promote local control and income opportunities at the local level while meeting social equality and community well-being. So far we have presented 3 papers in national conferences, 1 in an international conference. We have submitted 2 manuscripts, 1 under revision and another 2 is in the works, 1 with a junior faculty mentee and another 1 with an international collaborator. So the former looks at heterogeneous perceptions of residents towards small island tourism development, while the latter examine factors that make residents participate in tourism development. So we also noticed that during, when we conducted our project, that there's little attention or study have been done with regards to decent work in the tourism frontliners. So this became an inspiration to my current study on decent work of tourism frontliners under the CHED's EduTourism program. So thank you, everyone. And I hope to get some of your feedbacks to help us with our publication. Madam, ugid na salamat.
Okay, thank you very much, Cheryl. So there are some congratulatory notes here for you from Elsie Jimenez and from VP Sinch. After listening to you, I felt like packing my bags, and going to those islands. But I'm interested to know, how the people feel in these smaller islands vis-a-vis, say, Boracay. I'm sure there's a little bit of envy for them because they don't have enough tourists. But at the same time, they have to be sustainable because Boracay has kind of failed in that. What do the people feel in your dialogue with them? How do the people feel about this? Like, do they want more people, or they would rather have fewer people and be more sustainable?
We actually conducted our research before the pandemic, the data collection itself. So I think one of the threats that we identified in our SWOT analysis, because at that time it was already in the pandemic when we created the strategies. And we mentioned there that COVID is actually one of the threats. So pre-pandemic, the impression of the residents is that they are actually robbed of the benefits that should have been theirs, like the benefits of the tourism activities. And there's always a conflict with these four different, which is evident in four different small islands. Conflict with the mainland tourism stakeholders because they have the ports, take-off points. In our resident survey, we also included the residents from within the community or within the take-off points. And we also mentioned in one of our solution that there should formalize the intermunicipal network of stakeholders towards a common strategic goal that they have to sit down and talk about the uneven distribution of tourism benefits, because it seems that the mainland residents are getting much of the bulk of the tourism receipts. And that's why I said they feel that they were robbed of the tourism benefits. And they are also living with the consequences of too many tourists. One of our data small islands, the Gigantes group of islands, they're actually very famous now with their selfie area. There's one island that is a very good picture taking or breathtaking view. And they actually recorded in 2019 around 92,000 tourists going into the island, and they are actually suffering from the effects, negative effects of quote unquote mass tourism in there, but they're getting less of the benefits. So I think that's one of the results or the findings that we had. It's nice if there would be that we can do a research during the COVID-19 pandemic. I know it's going to be hard to see and go back to the islands and look at their perceptions. They are recovering now, I heard, but there is declining tourist demand at the moment in these small islands.
Okay, so we have, I think, room for one more question. Professor Serafika, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to share one presentation that I heard in December, actually. This is from Mayor Coro of Del Carmen, Siargao. And I think they're a very good model for both sustainability and expansion of a small island model that you're talking about. And of course, this is right before that, and that really devastated the whole Visayas area, including them. And we were actually being attracted to do some program with them under the UNILAB Foundation that I'm part of, and they were actually visited. But now, of course, all of the plans have been derailed, unfortunately. But that's one. I just wanted to say that, of course, pre-Odette, Siargao is like, to me, a good role model or a model, because Mayor Coro was 3 terms of mayor and his mom is now mayor, but they continued all the sustainability. They even have a climate change sustainability university, and they have all the mangrove preservation activities and the sharing that you're talking about within the towns of Siargao, starting with Del Carmen, of course. So that's one. And then, of course, you're concerned about what's happening in Gigantes. There are discussions regarding, carrying capacity of the islands, and I think that's something we can probably seek counsel. I don't know who's the expert in UP. I'm sure academician may recommend some recommendations. Who probably has? It's been discussed in the National Academy a lot in terms of our carrying capacity in various programs, including tourism. And maybe that might be a good follow-on research activity for your small island. So tell them that, guys, you're not that big. You can only carry capacity of 10,000. So Gigantes, no more than 10,000. Something to that effect probably would be very helpful for them. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I comment on what Sir Serafika said?
Go
No,
ahead.
actually, one of our strategies that we want to push for small islands is to go ecotourism and partner with seek assistance with higher educational institutions and research institutions near the small islands. Like, for example, in Apo Island, we have the Diliman University and, of course, UP Visayas for Malalison and for Guimaras, because there's a lot of local higher education institutions to do these carrying capacities and perhaps put a ceiling on the number of tourist arrivals accordingly. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Cheryl. So I think that ends our very interesting second session. So from the arts to tourism to climate. So thank you very much to all the presenters. Those were very, very interesting researches. And may I now turn you over to Isaiah.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for moderating our session 2. Congratulations again to Dr. Gigi, Prof. Nick, and Dr. Baggy and Dr. Cheryl for your accomplishments in your research projects. On to the next part of our program. Please welcome Professor Emeritus Cleophas Servancia, our moderator for the Open Forum.
Right. So welcome to this portion, the Open Forum. So after hearing all those scholarly, outputs, now we are really very proud of our proponents, our project team. So you can ask questions. There are 7 papers presented, and kindly indicate the person or the project that we would like to address. So the table is now open for discussion. Anybody? You may use the chat box, or you can personally ask the question. Okay, now for the first presenter, Joey, and then the second also on polydopamine. Now, I'm interested to know, because, you put in there that one of the constraints, of course, is the economic viability. Now, because we should evaluate the cost. So it's a very important factor. Now, how will you address this? Or shall we invite anyone from social science or an economist to evaluate the economic viability and feasibility of this emerging technology? So may I hear from the proponents? So what are your suggestions? Yeah, you said it's very costly. All right. And some of the materials are unavailable. Now, because there is no question about the expertise, so it's money matters. So Dr. Ocon, are you around? Or Dr. Nuesca?
I think I'll answer for them, Dr. Cleophas. Because
okay,
I'm the
thank you.
For everyone who's planning to commercialize any technology in the UP system, there's the UP TTBDO, the Technology Transfer and Business Development Office, which I've been a consultant since the time of VP Giselle in 2013, 2014, and a visiting professor of UP. We have continued that work under Dr. Louis Season for the last 7 years. And clearly, that's an activity that is mainly focused on transferring the research activities like what we saw here today, the EIDR research, the words research, and we can help assess both the cost-benefit analysis of such research And actually, part of our training to the researchers is to expose them to what we call now customer discovery, which is looking for potential adapters as well as the stakeholders for their research for potential transfer, adoption, and commercialization. And clearly, there has been an experience on several spin-off companies. I think there are about 4 in Diliman. Our first spin-out company is MTech of Dr. Raul Destura, the one who developed your COVID kit, which was spun off in 2015 using the technology for his dengue detection. And when 2019 came, we were actually already looking at ASEAN deployment for such kits together with Indonesia for about 100 million kits application. And then COVID happened. So he had to pivot and look for applications of his capability towards COVID detection, which he successfully developed and now is doing very well in supporting our health efforts in the pandemic. And that's, of course, with the support of Dr. Eva and NIH for the testing, Dr. Cynthia Saloma at PGC. But it's a whole UP effort when we do technology commercialization, as well as, of course, in terms of health applications, definitely clinical testing, as Eva was talking about, will be the next step for some of the projects of for applications in the health capability. But there is an arm, in case you guys are not familiar with UPTPBDO. We are here. We are not a lot. There are only I think there's only 1 or 2 items in that group. I've been a supporter and consultant for it, and always also helping towards the eventual transfer to upscale and enterprise for spin-out companies in place. The faculty and partners would want to actually create a company and take on investments. But clearly, that's a whole, for lack of a soup to nuts, development of technology in UP that's been in place. And there are shining examples like MTech, as well as other companies now that have gone through our process. I've probably mentored more than 20 companies. At least there's probably 1 or 2 that's making good money, but usually that's the hit rate. But I think Joey is already on his way to do that, as well as I think in an earlier phase probably might start wanting to contemplate for Dr. Nuestra to do that. But it is a science. Technology commercialization, having spent 30 years in it, is a ongoing and a long drawn process. We've been at it for 7 years in UP, and I'm hoping that a lot of the EIDR projects will end up being part of it in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for sharing. So that will be, and that should be the next step. Kasi sayang naman po yung mga technology. Okay, how about the others? Any other question? These are very interesting papers. So,
Doc Leo,
yes,
Cleo, this May.
yes, Ma'am May.
Gusto ko lang susugan yung sinabi ni Dr. Al. I think in all the campuses we have the TTBDO, Technology Transfer Development Business Office, no? And that's also in response to the Technology Transfer Act. I don't remember now the year. So alam natin ang mga scientists hindi naman business, walang masyadong business minded.
Yeah.
Oo, malulugi agad yan. So kailangan talaga ng help ng ating this office na sila din ang tutulong sa una kung talagang patentable ba siya, kung mapoprotektahan. At sila din ang kukuha ng mga investors kasi patenting is an expensive venture, no? From patenting to commercialization. So this is an opportunity for all of us to share this information with our young researchers here, na if you really have something na nakita nyo na mukhang siya ay pwedeng ma-commercialize, don't announce it to the public, no? Kailangan kasi meron tayong walang disclosure, no? So be careful, and I think we have in our OVPAA, no, palaging sinasabi ito na before you present to at a conference, you have to get clearance from the OVPAA so that you can be guided accordingly, no? So thank you, Dr. Al, no? Kailangan talaga na ang tulong ng ating mga researchers tungkol dito. Thank you also, Cleo, for that.
Okay, any more? Yes, Dr. Maala, I see you raising your hand.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I would like to address my question to Professor De Ocampo about cinema. Is he still around?
Yes, I am. Eager to hear from you.
Napanood ko yung lecture mo nung that was sponsored by US Embassy at saka Ayala Foundation about yung movie ni Hilda Coronel at saka ang ganda po, ang ganda. Now my question is, do you think there is a return of black and white movies and silent movies?
No, there cannot be because all of the, that kind of style is not trans-historical. In other words, that style worked because of the technology during the time. If ever we are going to do that, and there are some who are doing that, like Love Diaz, but look, where is his audience? No, the people do not and may not really be interested in that anymore. Therefore, certain styles belong to certain periods. I think we need that to keep that in mind. And therefore, bringing back the black and white may really be an effort. In fact, together with the Film Development Council of the Philippines, we are steering up in the young generation the possibility of appreciating black and white. So they held a competition, spent quite a lot of money, around maybe 5 million, to produce short films that are in black and white. The reception, however, was really immense. You are quite right. I think I know where you are going. The possibility of bringing all this black and white, but we need to, however, embody it and contextualize it as to what we want to do, why we are going to shoot it in black and white. And let me go to semiotics. This is why it's important. We cannot just mass produce any film that we want. And that's why I said, the informing principle behind whatever style or film we want to do would really be what is the semiotic of it, because all films are images and images are signs, and signs have meanings, and therefore meanings produce knowledge, and therefore can we do a pedagogy out of it. I am very clear with my pedagogical principle behind it, and I hope having articulated that today, that has been reinforced. And just to close my answer to you is that the potential of a black and white cinema is there, but it is only one of the many options that we can possibly do.
Kasi sa black and white, it is more impactful.
It is just a code. At the end of the day, sir, black and white is still a code. And it is very quite a contentious proposition you have, because colored right now has its own larger audience.
Kasi sometimes you're distracted with colors. Pag black and white, andun lang, di ba? Whereas kung colorful yung too much colors or too many.
I teach early cinema, and black and white is what I teach. And I know the whole philosophy, history, technology behind all of that, even the reception of black and white. So I do understand you. Many still believe that the best cinema is black and white. I do sympathize with you, but well, sir, the world has moved on.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Nick and Dr. Maala. Maybe black and white for like 70 and above, and then the millennials, they would really appreciate the colored films. Now, if there are no more questions,
Ma'am Gigi.
yes, ma'am, please.
Yes, I would like to add on to anong sinasabi ni Professor Nick. Kasi ngayon, because we have this technology, maraming forms ang lalabas. Yan po ay panahon na para lahat po maging involved. It's a change of language. It's a kaya sinasabi ni Sir Nick talagang pedagogical ang pagbabago and revolutionary in a sense. Ganon din, for example, yung I would say animation, mabubuhay din po yan. Napakalaking field. So, pagka magkaroon ng electronic version, katulad ng storya ni Sora at yung mga ginagawa ni Sir Nick ngayon, makikita mo, ang laki ng proportion niyan sa animation. So, that's another, pero madaming genres yan, ha? Madami pong genres, hindi lang animation, merong narrative, may experimental, documentary, and so on. And we hope makita natin yung sinasabi ni Prof. Nick na panahon na talagang ito ay ginagamit for science, for the arts, and for the social sciences. So thank you po.
Yeah, thank you. How about my colleagues from EEMC? Would you like to give your comments or any question for our speakers? How about for Sora? It's very interesting. The role of women, the importance of history, especially during these days that we are really very much concerned about this historical fact. So, women empowerment, you know.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Ganun po yung papalabas po natin yung mga importanteng issues para sa atin, pwedeng bigyan natin ng space. In fact, space sa virtual world. Dahil po everybody's accessing that. Ibig sabihin, everybody can now access and be part of the narrative. And we can become, or in other words, tayo ay madadagdagan kapag napanood natin yung ating trabaho, di ba ho? So ganun din yun, Sir Al, you know, ang laki ng possibility po nito talaga. Even telling stories of scientists, telling stories of our thought leaders, telling, ano po ito parang, at kailangan i-claim ng ating scholars, researchers, and teachers, the virtual world. Gawa tayo ng gawa dapat para mabawas-bawasan, ma-move ang mga fake news at itong mga evidence-based and research-based ang ilagay natin. But it has to be massive. It has to have critical mass to be able to have impact. So,
thank you, Doc Gigi. Exactly, that's what I wanted to address. Kasi it's really all hands on deck if you want this to happen.
Thank you.
And I've been in UP together with you guys for 7 years, and I've been watching your growth and your development in various fields. And clearly, it's always eye-opening for me whenever the likes of you and of course Nick now, of course Nenny Pernia always joined us together with Gambayan. Of course, I always see ABP Carla because we're both scientists in our but clearly I'm also watching my kids. I have a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. There's this animation called Genshin. It's a historic, wow, animation effect and with very interesting characters. I look at your Zora. Of course, there's the aspect of being able to animate our in order to communicate essentially with our younger generation. And of course, I'm a scientist and I wanted to communicate the values as well as make a value proposition to our younger group in terms of the value of science. And I think that's probably together we may be able to indeed reach the critical mass. Maybe this is another project for us, Doc Gigi, similar to our Aghambayan. And of course, with Nick and definitely with the support of VP Cinch and AVP Carla. Let's talk about it. I'll join in Cheryl Monterola at NISMED in order to put the STEM aspect to the whole learning.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Al. Maybe hear from PMA.
Yeah, thank you very much. Prof. Gigi, matagal ko nang hinihintay yung anime, yung parang webtoon na Sora, no? Every week,
Galaw-galaw,
short episode.
Alam nyo, nung
e-version.
bata ako,
Opo.
every week, I would be looking forward to the comics. Monday, Tuesday, hanggang Friday yan, iba-iba yung comics. And I would read all the stories. Parang ganun din yun, yung sa webtoon na papadala niyo.
Kwento ni Lola Basyang. Kwento, di ba?
Gawin na natin. Abril na, ma'am.
Pwedeng
Abril na, promise nyo. Saka si Prof. Nick din, promise.
Na-delay nga po but thank you for your support. Thank you,
Prof.
ma'am.
Nick, we're rooting for you and Prof. Gigi.
Salamat.
Kung hindi ako naging biochemist, historian ako. So, kaya gusto ko yung trabaho nyo.
Prof. Nick.
I can't let this opportunity go because I really would like us to look at the opportunity that is before us. I mean, even just among us, I think the enthusiasm is there. And we do not just carry humanities and the arts. I'm as excited right now to make movies about mangroves and what exactly Sir Al is trying to tell us right now. I mean, how can we really illustrate all these chemical compositions and everything? All I want to say here right now is that UP can lead the way. I think something just was born, in this meeting, virtual meeting today. And we would like, I'm sorry to really say this, but take to task our university that do not let go of this opportunity. I know we've got TVUP, I know we've got the Open University, etc. But I think we need to now harness ourselves into thinking exactly that now the movie studios are our own university campuses. We have a captured market. I mean, what else are we looking for? It is Netflix and GMA getting into our markets and eating up our markets when we could, it's like our West Philippine Sea. How can we leave it open for other poachers to just go and invade our own territory? This is our territory. Consider 100,000 na lang na UP students right now and the teaching force that can make their own films. That's why tomorrow I'm leaving for Quezon for the mangrove, the largest mangrove territory there, together with Doc Lemuel and Ma'am May. And these are professors who will be writing their scripts and directing the films because they are experts of what it is that they want to do. I'm only a support system to them. What is pedagogical? That's, I'm going to be the devil behind their back. Dean Ami Ramulete, can you imagine? She is a dean already and she made a fantastic film on puppetry right now. It's unbelievable how semiotics was incorporated right into the very theatrical presentation, which I'm sure she did not even imagine. So we are now looking at puppetry from a totally different point of view, and the pedagogical knowledge that can be culled out from that practice is just immense. We are just at the tip of an iceberg, and UP, with its workforce, intellectual workforce, plus its captured market of 100,000, plus our neighbors, the UP, FEU, UST, and all this is just going to be a huge movement. And I think, this will create the intellectual infrastructure that I'm talking about. I can't wait for VP Sinch to talk. She has her hand raised.
Okay, VP Sinch.
So I was going to say that, sorry, I just put this up.
So that's the aspect.
Sorry, I'm double devising, but this is so exciting. The thing is, we are now talking about the future of teaching and learning in UP, which will be now. Okay. Well, there's a task because this is something that will go through all the consultations. But we are now just drafting, and there's a task force that is working on this. The task force contains people, or is made up of people of different perspectives. The point is there should be space, I think at bottom line, space for a lot of innovations at the level of departments, at the level of units. And then we talk about the administrative support for that, because certain things will change, diba? And that is where we are going. And Gigi, we're also going to have a conference on all of this sometime, I guess.
Yeah. Hopefully very soon, ma'am.
Yeah. So we are in an exciting time.
We started with the GE courses.
Yeah.
Ang dami nang pumunta dito, and we should announce it there, ma'am.
And then pati yung mga MOOCs, diba? Pwede ba mga MOOCs exciting? I mean, in other words, you put our technologies there, so that I just want to say that this is where UP is going, and we have to determine this for the next 3 years, diba? For the next, hindi na tayo, but the next administration, except that we will actually lay the groundwork for that roadmap that will have to be accepted by the community as a roadmap, and that roadmap at the end of the day allows innovations at different levels. And I guess your innovations in teaching and learning must figure in exactly what the future of teaching and learning is. And that is that we are not going to go back to the past. And that's it. So I'm also in another meeting that's actually discussing all of this. Ito naman nag-AI, di ba? And all of those things that, anyway, exciting. And thank you very much. Okay,
thank you. Yeah, Ma'am Sinch. So any other question? Well, maybe if there's none, I can summarize. All right, so we have paper starting from physics, all right? So it shows really the EIDR image. And then we have in social science, so I really appreciate the cinema, and of course the SORA. But I'm from biological sciences, and I really appreciate these things. And I'm sure it will help a lot in teaching the students because the medium would matter. You can make the subject more interesting. And I enjoin my colleague to give materials for cinema, isn't it? Maybe I'm fascinated that you're working on mangrove, and please work. There are a lot more ecosystems out there. So for appreciation of the majority of the students. And then we have on the environment, the SMART. And then we realize we are not yet really that ready for disaster. So this is very timely. And of course, the last paper on tourism. Now, because we all know how the pandemic and of course the other calamities impacted the tourism industry. So we will also appreciate if the group of Joy, they can reconcile the result of their work on the current status of tourism in the country. Okay, so with that, I'd like to congratulate really all our project leaders and their team, and of course my colleague, the EIDR, and the officials, Ma'am Carla. We really should be very proud of our research team, of the UP. And then we appreciate also the collaboration. So that is the key. And that's why it enhanced our capability. Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Emeritus Cleo and the ENC for a meaningful discussion on our day one of the 2022 Research Symposium. Thank you as well to our participants for your comments and your questions. To present the certificates of appreciation for our speakers, may I call on Rona Bisado, please.
Thank you, Isaiah. To cap off our day one, the Office of the Vice President for Academic Affairs presents the Certificate of Appreciation to our speakers for imparting their invaluable knowledge during the 2022 Research Symposium held via Zoom, given the 7th day of April 2022. Signed by VP Maria Cynthia Rose Banzon Bautista. To Dr. Joey D. Ocon. To Dr. Guillermo M. Nuesca. To Dr. Concepcion P. Ponce. To Dr. Grace J. Alfonso. To Professor Nicolas A. De Ocampo. To Dr. Ricardo T. Bagarinao. And to Dr. Cheryl Joy F. Abila.
Thank you, Rona, and to our speakers. Thank you everyone again for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate your support and your attendance. We still have day 2 and we start tomorrow at 1 p.m. If you haven't registered, please scan this QR code or go to the link pasted on the chat box. I'd also like to invite everyone to please answer our feedback form. You can scan this QR code or access through the link posted on the chat box. And for those who would like to receive their certificates of attendance, this feedback form is required. Once again, if you would like to receive your certificate of attendance for the day one of the research symposium, this feedback form is required. And before we all leave the room, may I invite those joining us in the Zoom to please turn on their cameras and let's take a quick group photo. Let's turn on our cameras. Okay, so all smiles, please. We have 4 pages on my screen, so let's quickly. So smile, 1, 2, 3. All right, next one, please keep your smiles. 1, 2, 3. Another one. Okay, so smile, 1, 2, 3. And last, please hold your smiles. 1, 2, 3. All right, so that ends our day one of the 2022 Research Symposium. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you tomorrow on our day 2. And thank you very much once again. See you all tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.